Okay, at this time, I'm going to call to order the Southeast Polk Community School District Board meeting to order. Karen,
Handy,
Here.
Crab,
Here.
Ernst,
here.
Nave,
Here.
Slings,
Here.
Smith McIntosh,
Here.
Powell.
Here.
Okay, moving on to item B, the agenda adoption. Is there any changes to the agenda?
No.
Right, I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Karen.
Crab,
Yes.
Ernst,
Yes.
Nave,
Yes.
Slings,
Yes.
Smith McIntosh,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Handy,
Yes.
Moving on to district vision and mission. Rick, do you want to?
Yep. Southeast Polk Community School District, learn, lead, and live. Success for college, career, and civic life. Engage all students in learning a challenging curriculum delivered through quality instruction.
Thank you. This time, we're going to move on to public comments, and I'm going to read the open forum guidelines first. The board recognizes the importance of citizen participation in school district matters. Citizens wishing to address the board must do so during the public forum portion of the agenda. Citizens need to complete a public comments card prior to the meeting and give to the superintendent or board recorder. The public comments cards are located on a table at the entrance of the meeting. If an individual wishes to address the Board of Education, time is limited to 3 minutes on one agenda item. Any group wishing to address the Board of Education should elect a spokesperson. The spokesperson is limited to 5 minutes on one agenda item. The board president will recognize these individuals to make their comments at the appropriate time. When addressing the Board of Education, state your name and group name if applicable, address, city, and agenda item to be addressed. Only those speakers recognized by the board president will be allowed to speak. Comments by others are out of order. If disruptive, the individual causing disruption may be asked to leave the board meeting. Okay, we have some public comments. First, I'm going to call up Cassie Lehman to address the board. Right over here, yep. And you have 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Cassie Lehman and my address is 412 25th Avenue Southwest here in Altoona. Was I supposed to add anything else? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm the mother of 2 Southeast Polk graduates and also of Kobe Lehman, who's currently in 7th grade at the junior high school. I'm also a teacher for Des Moines Public Schools with over 30 years experience. Today, I wrote you an email giving you a history of my concerns and the violent situation that included my son. We're all well aware of the challenges facing our schools and our students over the last few years. I know from experience that this is one of the most difficult years ever in education. Unfortunately, we do not have the luxury of time with our current challenges. There is a record increase of violence in our schools. There's also a brutality of that violence that's frightening. Since my son's attack, I've heard of multiple serious incidents, and I don't really pay attention. There was a girl pushing an autistic kid downstairs for a TikTok, a fight during dismissal behind buses where a student lost a tooth, a gun brought to school. Thank you, Southeast Polk, for handling that well. However, I will tell you there was miscommunication that caused fear a lot of parents. I was wondering why a 12th grader was in the junior high with my son. He wasn't, but I didn't know that. I thought the gun was in the school with my son. There was a fight at the 6th grade center yesterday involving police. There was a fight in the junior high again today that my kid told me about. As an educator, I know that if my students' basic needs aren't met, they will not be ready to learn. Feeling safe is an essential part of that. Today, my son told me he doesn't feel safe. He also told me he doesn't really feel like he can tell people at school if there's a problem. I was hurt. I personally was hurt when he said that only a few staff would care, because as a teacher, I know that's not true. I know that the staff cares deeply for our students. Since my son's attack, I have spoken with SRO and admin. I've spoken to teachers and parents and students. Many are sharing things that they think would help. We need a fully comprehensive plan to stop the violence. We need to involve students, parents, teachers, staff, administration, and our community. One of the most concerning things was the lack of and inaccurate documentation in the instance of my son. Without proper data, it will be impossible to analyze and to create an effective plan of action. Quite honestly, it also doesn't feel very transparent. I feel like it was downplayed, the brutality that my son endured. The superintendent called me today and set up a meeting with me for Monday, and I'm appreciative of that. I'm encouraged by that step, but I'm here tonight to encourage the board to lead, partner with, and most importantly, see that there's follow through to make our schools safe.
Thank you.
Honestly, our students' lives are at risk. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Okay, up next is Tammy Dixon.
My name is Tammy Dixon. I live at 1329 9th Avenue Place Southeast here in Altoona. My husband Dave and I have 4 students at 3 schools within the district here. Our son, our oldest son, was a victim of a brutal, violent, premeditated group attack that occurred on November 10th in the high school parking lot, resulting in a broken wrist, concussion, and surgery to pin his growth plate back into place. Staff was unaware, that this incident had taken place until Altoona Police Department informed them of it. Prior to this attack, the perpetrator made contact with our son on October 13th. Our son walked away and we put him into ISS for his own issues to protect him from further confrontation. No parent or student should have to be placed into in-school suspension for their protection. On October 20th, the perpetrator made contact again with our son, and again, our son walked away. Staff was notified again. On November 29th, the perpetrator's brother, who was no longer taking classes on campus, made contact with our son in the high school commons at his study hall table. We have filed assault charges against 3 students and have 2 case numbers. All 3 incidents with the perpetrator occurred on late start days in the parking lot underneath the Southeast Polk sign. The impact? Our son, he's scared.
1 minute left.
He's unable to sleep at night. He's behind in academics. He's unable to swim on his varsity position, and he's unable to work as a farmhand. Our entire family is forever affected by this. To say there's a crisis is an understatement. Obviously, you're hearing from other parents today. We are overpopulated, and we have not risen up to meet the problems that come along with this. Teachers, administration, students, and staff are exhausted. This problem is universal within our district. There have been numerous physical fights, which you heard about, on buses, at the 6th grade center, and also at the junior high, within the walls and outside the walls. You may be asking yourself, why are kids so angry? It's social media. There's a vaping epidemic. My proposal is that we hire another SRO officer at the high school. There's an immediate need for security in our parking lot before and after school. If you have any doubt of this, I'll be happy to show you my son's attack.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comments? Have you received any more, Kevin, online? Okay. Jason, is there anything? Okay. I have a public comment. And this revolves around Mary Ann Peterson. This last weekend received a Lifetime Achievement Award. And I'm gonna read what was read when she received her Lifetime Achievement Award for the Southeast Polk River Mets. It is my pleasure this evening to honor this year's ISDTA Lifetime Achievement Award winner. This coach's dancing career began at the age of 2 when she first started dancing at a local studio and has continued ever since. She danced and helped teach at her local studio. She competed on her high school dance team for 25 years, coached at her alma mater. And for the last 17 of those years, the head coach of one of the most legendary dance teams in the state of Iowa. Under this coach's leadership, the team has amassed an unbelievable record of 22 state championships in various dances and 9 national championships. In fact, at the 2018 national championships, her team won in all 5 categories they entered: jazz, hip hop, lyrical, pom, and high kick. That year, not only did they receive overall national champions in the large school category, but also were crowned national champions in all divisions. I asked her activities director what her secret is, and he said, if I knew exactly what her secret was, I could tell it and be quite rich. She does it seemingly effortlessly, even though I know it isn't. She does a tremendous job in building a team. Everyone buys into what they are doing and work relentlessly towards being the best dance team they can be. She loves what she does and loves her athletes. She has very high standards and expectations, but her dancers have fun and enjoy what they do. That joy they get from performing is a direct reflection of the culture that she has created in the program. I could stand up here and go on and on about the amazing talent and accomplishments of her and her team, but I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about what a truly wonderful coach, teacher, and human being she is. She is positive, she is kind, and she truly cares about others. These qualities have been a great asset to the ISDTA Board of Directors for over 10 years. Her fellow district board members noted she is one of the most positive and upbeat coaches I have had the pleasure of working with on the board. She listens and gives sound and intelligent advice. Mary Ann Peterson received the Lifetime Achievement Award for her work with the Southeast Polk River Mets. And I'm reading that just because we have so many wonderful things going on within our district. Sometimes we don't always see or hear everything that's happening. So I thought I would share that tonight. All right. Any other public comments? Moving on to the consent agenda. I need a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussions? Questions? All right, Karen, move on.
Ernst,
Yes.
Nave,
Yes.
Slings,
Yes.
Smith McIntosh,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Handy,
Yes.
Crab,
yes,
All right, we're moving on to section 2, old and new business. Item A, confirmation of the next meeting. I need a motion.
I'll move to approve the next 2 meeting dates, January 6th, 2022, January 20th, 2022.
I'll second.
All right, Karen.
Nave,
Yes.
Slings,
Yes.
Smith McIntosh,
Yep. Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Handy,
Yes.
Crab,
yes,
Ernst,
Yes.
Okay, moving on to item B, return to learn. Need a motion?
I'd like to make a motion if I could. I'd like to make a motion that beginning Monday, January 3rd, the mask use for students at all Southeast Polk buildings be recommended indoors but not required.
Need a second?
I'll second.
Any discussions?
I would like to amend the motion. Is that possible to do?
Well, Rick would have to amend the motion, but I don't know if he wants to amend the motion.
Well, he hasn't heard what I want yet.
Okay,
Okay. I would like to move it to this coming Monday.
No. I think January 3rd is the time needed for those parents of elementary kids and sixth grade students to get their second vaccine and have the waiting period. I think it needs to extend past Christmas.
any other discussion?
What was the date when they approved that vaccine? Do you remember? I mean,
November the 3rd.
Well, widely available, yeah, November 2nd. So, yeah, there's been enough time as far as there will be
So
enough
they
time,
hit their
so.
third, it's 35 days. So it's 21 days. Tell me if I'm wrong, Tom.
Mhm.
But after the first shot, it's 21 days. And then they can get their second shot. And then it's 10 or 14 days before they're considered fully immune. So.
Yeah, it's like 14 days after. so.
And if you look at the numbers, if it was effective on the 3rd, then today is the 35th day.
If they had COVID, it's a longer waiting period. They couldn't get their shot.
That's true. But if they had COVID, they probably have some sort of immunity already.
Yeah. If they've had COVID, they know the effects of the variant.
Mhm.
And they know what it does to their family and their family members. And I don't want to be rushing something this major.
Well,
So I'm not going to amend my motion.
okay.
how many days do we have until Christmas break?
8 school
8
days.
days.
Yeah. 9. I'm sorry, I wasn't counting tomorrow.
Tom, are people gonna have the opportunity to get a vaccination over Christmas time? Like,
Yeah, your pharmacies will still be open, so.
in general, do pharmacies close on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day?
Most of them, yeah, getting an appointment on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day would obviously be difficult, but
Okay,
yeah.
so we
they're
should
still-
subtract those 2 days from the final amount of time that we have to get shots.
Yep, we
technically.
can do that, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, like I said, there's been enough time as far as, yeah, and just like the other shots, your first shot, it's 80-some% effective.
I think it's
As far as that
84,
goes,
something
so-
like that.
So yeah, the same kind of thing as far as whether
So
it's
we
first
have
or second.
84% effectiveness for kids who are basically around 98, 99% not immune, but less likely to get COVID. So it's mostly the parents and the visitors to the building that we need to be concerned about for them getting their shots. Not the younger ones, because they have a lower chance of getting COVID.
Right, yeah, our K through 6 would be our lowest,
But they can
Risk as far
still,
as
they
that
can still
goes.
transmit it.
yeah, with or
We can
without
all-
the shot.
I think there was one week
With
we
what,
had
Tom?
delayed.
With
where
or without the
students
shot.
couldn't get access. Also the 5 to 11-year-olds. There was one, the second week it opened up that there was a shortage of vaccines for the second week that it was approved. So that kind of slowed things down a little bit, but I don't think January 3rd is out of line. That we come back with after Christmas break and have the mask be optional.
No,
You
we're
know, I
talking,
think
we're
it's
talking.
great
more
that
days.
we are getting rid of masks. I think that's great, or making it optional. And there are definitely opportunities for exemptions. So I'm glad we put that out as well. I just hope that parents have the ability to make decisions for their families in the future.
We're talking eight days extra at school. It's just, the only thing that's frustrating is we have our lowest risk population that we're putting a mask on, which does the most damage to, or most degrading as far as the whole educational process and stuff. So, we have the lowest risk group and we're doing something to them that is hindering or harming their educational opportunities right now. So that's, I guess, the maddening part of it, as far as just why we're pushing it out farther and farther as far as that goes. I realize it's only 8 days, but it'd be nice if the kids got to see smiles and stuff before they went to break. The sooner we can do that, the better, because the more evidence coming out, it's like the more we see as far as how damaging this is to our youth. And that's kind of the only thing that I'm worried about, as far as the more we wait, the more damage we do. So we're not saving, we're not preventing, we're actually damaging the kids that we need to be helping the most as far as this time. So.
I would like to see some data on that. I guess I have not seen any studies on the damaging effect of masks on students. in
Oh, yeah.
learning and they're social emotional. I know that isolation has caused a lot of the issues and we're seeing that in some of, the behaviors that were given witness to tonight. But, if I had that data in front of me, I'd be more willing to consider it, but I have not seen any data that supports the argument. So
Okay, I can round it up, and send it to you too. So and the more that comes out, I mean, the worse it is as far as that goes. And it actually starts, it's funny, but it actually starts in utero as far as COVID and the damage that we're doing there. And so actually, as far as educational opportunities, that they say the babies are the ones that are suffering the most as far as what they've followed so far. And then that kind of walks up as far as the social emotional learning, all that. And then it's going up the ladder as far as K through 6 and all that kind of stuff. So it's funny that you say that, because the highest or the most damage we're doing right now is actually the youngest. And then we're starting to see that come up. So, but I can show that to you too, as far as
Yeah.
the study that's kind of following those children from birth up.
right,
And then
the
what
latest
they're
study
seeing.
I read said that they were able to read emotion even with masks on. That children, school age children were. That's the only evidence that I've read.
I visited schools quite a bit in the last few weeks, and a lot of us took part on that day where we helped serve lunch on that Thanksgiving. Wasn't Thanksgiving Day, but it was the week before, and the lunchroom was full of kids that get to take off their masks. They get to smile, they get to interact. I also am involved in playground projects where I've been to 3 or 4 schools, see the kids out on playground. We're not requiring any masks outside. So these kids in grades pre-K to 6 are getting chances to get the mask off. And I'm just asking for 8 more days to allow more kids to get through that time period that didn't get the shot the very first day it was offered. I think that's the least we can do to protect our kids and our families.
Any other comments?
No, I'm not gonna argue the 8 days, but I will just again make the statements that I think there's inconsistencies with the kids going out and playing outside, touching each other, playing. So let's get through the 8 days, be done with it. And I also agree that the board needs to allow the parents and their medical doctors to make the decisions for their families and not us 7 board members. Because I think we've caused, and in some rights, it's benefited, but I think in the most part, I have to agree with Tom. I think seeing the smiles, making sure that we can see the emotion of the kids. I mean, some people have good poker faces and you can't see their eyes, but you can definitely see when they're mad, happy, whatever the emotion that is. So that's all I'm going to say is just, I think let's get through these 8 days. Parents are doing what they want to do for their kids right now. I think when I go into the classrooms or the schools, it surprises me how many kids have their masks down, walking through the halls. I was actually surprised because there's, I try to be respectful and wear the mask when I go in, and then you look and you're like, oh, there's not as many people wearing masks as what I thought. So that's all I'm going to say, just because I can, and go on.
Okay,
In our last, whatever it's been, 8 weeks or something, as far as if you look at high school and junior high versus elementary, and that's a great example of how the numbers didn't change whether we were masked or non-masked. I mean, we've had fantastic data all the way through whether or not we were wearing masks. So
okay, any other comments? Karen?
Slings,
Yes.
Smith McIntosh,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Handy,
Yes.
Crab,
yes,
Ernst,
Yes,
Nave,
no,
Okay, moving on to item C, the public hearing for the City of Altoona easement, Clay Elementary.
They'll make a motion to approve the City of Altoona easement with Clay Elementary.
Well, I'll just open the public
Oh, that's
hearing,
right.
don't I?
I
Yeah,
was excited.
yeah, I know. 5:54, I'm opening the public hearing for the City of Altoona easement for Clay Elementary. I will now open the public hearing to receive comments on this public hearing for the City of Altoona easement. Board Secretary, have you received any written comments? Board Secretary, provide those orally if received. Is there anyone present wishing to provide comments? If so, please come to the podium. All right. The public hearing is now closed at 5:55. Item D is the City of Altoona easement for Clay Elementary. I need a motion.
I'm not gonna rush into it this time. I'm just going to take my time and just make the motion kind of,
Take your time,
You know,
Mr. Handy.
just slowly, maybe.
Just slow walk to it.
Can I have a few minutes to think about my motion? No, I'll make a motion to approve it.
I second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I just have a question for Tom. Is that dollar that they're gonna pay, is that enough value exchange for that easement?
If that's the best Kevin could bargain for, yes.
Okay, no other discussion, no other questions? Karen?
Smith McIntosh,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Handy,
Yes.
Crab,
Yes,
Ernst,
Yes.
Nave,
Yes.
Slings,
Yes. All right, moving on to item E, the multipurpose stadium change order. I need a motion, and it looks like Mr. Bacom is going to come and speak to that effect after I have a motion.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Good evening, board. This is the same change order that came across your tables during a board meeting a couple meetings ago. This was exceeding the $150,000 range that we first brought to you. This is $157,000. Now, in addition to that, as the agenda reads, there's additional work for backfill work. And there's actually a meeting with our civil engineers and geotech services to see if there's any additional things that might need to happen with the soils in that area. So I've indicated 45,000 here as backfill, but there's discussion about there may be additional rock or things that need to happen within that to make sure that we don't come to a situation when the stadium's done, that there could be issues with that wall in the future. So better to pay for things now rather than later.
Is the drainage working that they've got in there now with the, they had the, can't think of the,
There's a tiling aspect that
Yeah.
our geotech services and civil engineers have worked through. Yes, that is according to them supposed to work, but there are still some discussions being had with our construction people about whether or not that will work. So we just want to make sure that's going to work in the end, the tiling system.
Was this additional cost figured in ahead of time as a buffer or?
We have a construction contingency like we do with every project. So this will be part of the construction contingency piece of it. Yes.
How much do we have left?
Initially, we had $1 million built into the construction contingency, and this will about 20-25% once it's all said and done.
No, is the contingency for each project or is it spread across all the projects that we have happening?
Each capital project that we have has its own contingency
Okay.
piece of it. Depending on the project, it could be more or less, depending on what the complexity of that project is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions? Karen?
Powell,
Yes.
Handy,
yes.
Crab,
yes,
Ernst,
Yes.
Nave,
Yes.
Slings,
Yes.
Smith McIntosh,
Yes.
Okay, moving on to item F, we need to set the public hearing for plans and specifications on the softball field improvements. I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to set the public hearing for the plans and specs for the softball complex,
Well, second.
January 6th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second that.
You wanted, anything needed to discuss that, setting the public hearing? We're good. Karen?
Handy,
Yes.
Crab,
Yes.
Ernst,
Yes.
Nave,
Yes.
Slings,
Yes,
Smith McIntosh,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
all right, moving on to item G, setting the public hearing for plans and specifications on the 6-7 building. I need a motion.
Make that motion as well. Set the public hearing for plans and specs for the 6-7 building. And I don't have the date. It's January 6th.
January 6th.
January 6th as well.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussions or questions?
I do have a question. With these public hearings, do we reach out? I know that we put this information out to the community via YouTube, but do we reach out to let people know that there is a public hearing? Because there never really seems to be any questions.
Miss McIntosh, sorry.
You
hard
can
for
call me by my first name if.
It's okay. We do have regulations we have to follow regarding Code of Iowa. We have to publish these meetings 4 to 20 days prior to the meeting. So we do publish those in a regularly circulated newspaper here within the Altoona, Runnels, Mitchellville, Pleasant Hill area. So that does come through the Herald Index.
Okay. Is the Herald online as well? Just curious,
It is, but is it updated? I'm not sure how often it is updated.
because I never read the newspaper, so. Okay.
Any other questions? Karen?
Crab,
Yes.
Ernst,
Yes.
Nave,
Yes.
Slings,
Yes,
Smith McIntosh,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Handy,
Yes.
okay, moving on to the item H, which is increased adult lunch price. I need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Still an awful good price.
So I am curious, do teachers pay this or is this for adult visitors?
Both.
These are for any visitors that come to the school district, including our employees.
Okay.
Adults.
So any adult, yeah.
Gotcha. So I'm making you get your steps in, by the way.
You're fine.
Any other?
No, okay, Kevin, don't go too far. Is 10 cents really gonna make a difference for the rest of the year? I mean, is it something that we couldn't wait until the next year to do this?
It's a requirement by the USDE that we put that in place by January 1.
Enough said.
There you go.
All right.
Okay. Go ahead, Karen.
Ernst,
Yes.
Nave,
Yes.
Slings,
Yes,
Smith McIntosh,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Handy,
Yes.
Crab,
Yes.
turning it over to Mr. Hlupnik.
You bet. A few things to share, and a few have already been shared tonight. Have had a run of state championships, which is a fantastic thing, and just want to make sure we recognize our cheer squad, the Rhythmettes, football team, rugby club, all have recently been crowned state champions. And beyond that, we've had all kinds of success this fall. You don't have to necessarily win a state championship to be very successful. And I'll use swimming as an example. We had just a number of kids that had their personal best of the season at the state meet, and that alone is a big success. So a few other things and you've seen, hopefully, with some of the stories that Jeannie has put out. Mitchellville Elementary has been recognized on some rankings recently and been getting some deserved recognition on their test scores, their overall achievement. We had a chance to visit there earlier in September, or was it August? I think it might have been August, actually. And the building was here over the last month too, to kind of share some of that, but it's good to see that. And I don't want to say too much, but there may be more of that coming. Natalie did share with us at our last meeting that the college fair was during our last meeting at the high school. And I wanted to make sure we didn't let that go by without recognizing that focus on what happens next for our students. And we know that there's another side of that to come later in the spring dealing with the trades and apprenticeships on top of college as well. So we're providing lots of opportunities for students and families to get exposed, get some questions answered, and start the process of that next phase. I do want to also single out the band. There were 10 students selected to the South Central Iowa Bandmasters Honor Band over the last week. They're actually having a concert tonight. Starts, I think, in about half an hour, maybe, or maybe it just started. So hats off to them. The 4 mile board visit was mentioned, and I just want to go back to that morning for a minute to be able to see those students learning science, math, arts, and how all of that was put together seamlessly, and how much fun they were having, showing us how to do what they were doing and how proud they were. That was just a really a morning that helped kind of show us what it's all about. And I look forward to headed to Delaware next week on Thursday for our next visit, if you can make it. And then the final thing with some good news pieces, Lori mentioned Mary Ann Peterson in the lifetime honor. And we also had our football coach, Brad Zelenovich, named the state football coach of the year too. So I want to make sure we recognize both of them, for those are things that don't just happen every day. So hats off. Couple things as you look at just the meetings and where the focus of my work is. This is that time of year where we start to phase into planning for next year. And so you can see some of that as we're looking at capital projects coming up for next year beyond the projects that we've been and we'll hear about tonight that were part of the bond referendum, but our other capital projects that are SAVE projects, things that just continually need. We've had our first meeting with that, and we'll kind of start to solidify that over the next month here. And that eventually will come back to you as a board report. And then we're starting to look at budget. You're going to hear the first round of staffing tonight as in a discussion from Joe, and starting to look at the year to come. So just it's that time of year. It's hard to believe. It seems to go faster every year. A couple of other things that then are going to actually move into the next item, if it's okay if I just kind of transition. Number one, I had a chance to attend virtually the Greater Des Moines Partnership legislative breakfast this week, where they had leaders from both the House and the Senate from both parties, and talked a little bit about overall priorities. And I can tell you that the song continues to kind of be the same at all of the meetings, so that you can tell that this is solidifying the taxes, the state income tax, childcare, workforce issues, and attraction and retention of people to the state of Iowa are kind of the big picture items that are out there right now. Do they agree on how to get there? No, but that's kind of where things are there, and we heard that. And then one other thing related to next year and planning and legislation. The revenue estimating conference occurs on Monday morning of next week on December 13th. Remember, that's the group of three that set the overall budget estimates for the state of Iowa for the next year and then 2 years. But this one is important, especially important because the December meeting of the REC is binding for the governor and the legislation as they set their budget for next year. So what happens Monday morning will kind of determine what that budget looks like for a year from now, and we'll all have our eyes on that. At your spot, and I also attached it in the electronic version as well, you've got a little bit of a calendar of board advocacy events coming up. Some of them are still to be determined, but what has been set is in there. Beyond that, you also have all of the legislators that represent Southeast Polk as a district, both senators and representatives there with their pictures, so you can recognize them. You've got a timetable of the events of the legislative session, and then further back, there's the leadership of both the House and Senate, along with all of the education related committees, so you can kind of see, and we do and always have been fortunate to have both senators and reps that represent us as a district that sit in powerful positions in those education committees as well. So beyond that, I don't want to take any more time because we have several reports here coming up that are much more exciting than this right now, but I want to make sure you knew what that was and that you had it in your possession.
Thank you. Next, you want me to- I'm assuming that was just part of B.
Yeah, that
right?
was
Okay.
the end of B.
So next up is the softball complex update.
Jason Bloom, the lead architect with RDG, is here to discuss the project. We'll have a few slides to present, and Mr. Good is back here as well.
Good evening, board. My name is Jason Bloom with RDG Planning and Design, here to review the updates to the softball complex. Take a look at the project schedule, where we're at today, moving forward, and give you a review of where the design stands today as well. From a project standpoint, kind of small print here, but that red dash line is where we're at today. We're towards the end of construction documentation, so the design team is working on finishing up the final details for the project. We anticipate wrapping up documents in time for the public hearing on January 6th. We have gotten approval through planning and zoning through the city, so we're all good on that front as well. From a construction standpoint, we are looking at the bulk of the construction happening right after the softball season is complete and trying to wrap it up by about this time next year. There might be some things happening prior to the end of softball season, as long as it doesn't impact the baseball, softball areas around the site. That's a quick review of the schedule, taking a look at the design process. So throughout the whole design process over the last 6 to 8 months, we worked with the steering committee through Southeast Polk, had several meetings, and we had a really good opportunity about a month and a half or so ago to bring in Coach Stiles and Mr. Campbell and a few of the softball players into the RDG office, and we got to get into the VR system. So each of the players could walk around the site, get into the dugouts, see the details of the dugouts, to see kind of how the fun components worked out. So that was a really fun experience, and nice to see everybody face to face and do that activity. We got some really good feedback during that process. It's so much easier for people to see something three-dimensionally rather than looking at black and white plans and elevations they don't look at every day. So really fun experience doing that. Here's an update to the plan. The footprint of the existing softball field is going to be very similar to what is out there now. The components include renovating the existing natural grass and skinned infield to all synthetic turf, outfield, synthetic turf infield, and warning track. New dugouts that will be similar to the baseball dugouts that were constructed 8 to 10 years ago or so. The existing grandstand seating will remain as is, and then we'll provide a new press box, as that press box is getting old and it's a little bit smaller. So we want to make that size more similar to the baseball press box. Got new bullpens down the first base and third base lines as well. Also synthetic turf, new sports field lighting to accommodate the field as well. And then we also have a new restrooms building at the main entry, along with the new ticket booth space at the main entry too. So it's in a similar location to where your existing ticket booth is right now. And that is meant to serve both baseball
Where
and
the tree
softball.
is, where the people sit.
The tree is going to be preserved. That's a big tree. So it's important to try to protect that feature as much as we possibly can. So that's a plan of it. Also new concrete sidewalks to access from restroom building down to the seating area, down to the dugouts, all ADA accessible.
Can you show me kind of where the restroom building is? Just.
Yep, you bet.
Sorry.
So in plan view, it's
This is
up
the
in
first
here.
I've seen of this.
Yeah,
so.
you bet. So
Okay.
it's the same entry point as where you would go
Okay.
now, up in this
Kind of where we
location.
used to keep the Kaibos.
Yep.
Okay.
That's right. That's right. Yep. And then there'll be a new sidewalk down through here to get to a entry pathway that goes behind the bullpens, behind the home dugout to get to your seating over in that location here. This is the existing storage building that will remain in use. Existing concessions building down here beyond right field that will remain in use. We're also preserving the existing batting cages, preserving the existing scoreboard beyond left field as well. We also have some three-dimensional images. So this is kind of an aerial, kind of hovering above the baseball field, looking back to the northeast towards the facility. Looking at chain link, 6-foot tall chain link fencing with a yellow cap on top to match baseball. Foul poles down the line, got white foul poles actually over here because need to contrast to the yellow softball. Another image looking kind of towards the northwest. One unique factor with synthetic turf, you have more kind of fun design opportunities. So we've included a black warning track around the perimeter as well, with the Southeast Polk logo beyond center field. In the area looking at behind home plate area, looking back towards the southwest. A little bit more detailed view hovering above center field, looking back towards home plate. So backstop wall, we've got a concrete backstop wall with padding. With softball, some of the regulations and rules are different than what baseball is. So we've got backstop padding due to the proximity from home plate to the backstop. There's some Southeast Polk logos back there. And then one nice unique factor, instead of the chain link backstop, we've got a netting tie back system. So we've got 4 poles, two poles that are behind the bleachers and then 2 that are beyond the dugouts. So when you're sitting in the spectator seats, you'll have a totally clean view, no poles in the way or anything like that. The netting goes from the backstop and it actually goes beyond to the ends of the dugouts as well. So you've got, and I'll show you a detailed dugout here in a bit. Here's an entry perspective here, looking at the ticketing and restroom building, same location.
Perfect.
Yep. So you walk through, get your tickets, go through the entry gate, make your way to the restroom if you need to, and you go down the path to concessions or to baseball or softball. Just another image shifting over just a little bit there.
Can you tell us the seating capacity?
Oh, that's a good question. Hasn't changed. But the, I want to say it's probably 300 to 400 if I had to guess. But the toilet amount in.
Not toilet, I meant seating stadium.
Correct. I'll have to give you that number. I don't
Okay.
know it off the top of my head.
There's plenty of room for lawn chairs, Rick.
Right.
Yep.
If you're gonna build something, you don't want to build it too small. Is it still 18 inches per seat?
We're not touching the seats.
You're not touched, so
We're not
it's
tou-
remaining.
The seats are
It's
remaining.
Existing seats.
That's right. The bleachers are in good condition. The
All
only
right.
thing that we're touching around the
Is it the press
bleachers
box?
is the press box.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
We replaced the bleachers when we redid the field the last
Right.
time, but it was grass.
Yep. Here's just some quick plan views of the dugouts, similar sized as baseball, kind of fine tuned a little bit based on direction from coach style. So the home dugouts got storage added to it as well. Bench and some cubbies and some other components for baseball. Elevation views of the dugouts, similar finishes, materials as what was used at baseball in the baseball press box. Here's some plan views of the restrooms and concessions building. The reason I mentioned toilet fixtures when you mentioned the seating capacity is that the quantity of toilets shown here, 8 women's toilets, 2 men's toilets, 2 urinals, is based on the number of seats provided at baseball and softball to accommodate that. And then the ticket space over here, a diagram of that space there too. Press box, essentially we're moving the old one and the new one is going to be twice the width of what you currently have right now.
But no elevator required.
No
correct?
elevator required because the size of the press box is less than 500 square feet and it's attached to the bleachers.
Perfect.
And then it's just kind of some detail images of press box. The image on the right is the baseball dugout, trying to keep the character as much as we can. In the softball one, we're going to try to remove these posts and have more of a larger header up there so that we can support the load with it and kind of get some of the items that are in view out of that situation there. So, and then we're using some kind of nice bat rack and helmet cubbies in the dugout as well. Here's just an image of a rendering of the new dugout. But you can see the netting that extends above for player protection. So that's a little bit different nuance from baseball to softball. Baseball, you're not required to have protective netting or fencing in front of you. At softball, you need to have that due to the proximity to home plate. And just another image of the interior of the dugout.
Lighting, we have adequate lighting, so there'll be no dark spots and
There'll be sports field lighting,
yes.
correct?
Okay.
Yes, that will be adequate based on NFHS rules and regulations, high school sports regulations.
No dark spots on the field.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be lighting studies completed by our
Ahead
lighting
of
designer
time.
to verify that what was designed and installed is in fact installed correctly.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes. Okay, old tennis court, this may not be your, but so one time we were talking about only removing half the tennis courts to make room for this project. Are we getting rid of all the old tennis courts and cleaning that
To
mess
be
up?
determined. Great question. In order for the restroom facility to sit where it sits, at least one of those courts will have to be demoed. And that came up as part of our discussion for the district projects for next year. As to, is it time to just demo the whole thing? And then what does that look like then? And so that's the conversation that we need to have next.
Yeah, well, I would definitely be in favor. It's an eyesore. It looks
I think it's
terrible. If we're
time.
gonna do nice projects like this, let's get rid of the,
So when you say you'll determine what that looks like, are you going to think about putting in new tennis courts?
We already have.
We have, okay,
Yep,
sorry,
west of the high school.
got it.
I know that causes problems for baseball because they use that for pitching or something, but it just,
It is
maybe,
nice.
maybe we can figure out something else for both complexes on something like that, but
Agreed.
You talking indoor hitting facility?
Yeah.
All right.
the second one
Yes, Tom.
is, will the restrooms have air or will they have the old Kaibo feel?
They'll be naturally ventilated, but they won't have air conditioning.
Does that
We
go with
don't
the
have
press
all our
box and
school
the
buses
ticket
air
too?
conditioned. You want the bathrooms air
Correct.
conditioned?
Well, I think
We want it all.
you don't want to walk in there on a hot summer day and it smells like, you know what? I
Okay,
mean,
well.
that's why we want to,
That's the same thing with the
we can't find a little money for some air, like a
Ventilator.
wall air conditioner or something.
excellent press box and the tickets too.
It gets it's pretty toasty in those.
'Cause we've had to add that to the baseball after the fact. It's kind of a pain. I'd rather do it.
Anyway,
now.
just food for thought. I don't-
How long
If
are
you
you,
guys-
how long are you planning on spending in there?
You never
You just
know.
never know.
Depends on the
You never
concessions,
know.
Bridget.
I mean, that's, sometimes you need a moment of peace.
Can't rush it.
Okay, he's already
Can't
sweating.
handle the pressure of the game. You gotta go take care of. Anyway, and then the pavers, are those gonna be relocated?
They're gonna be maintained with the exception of there's one wing that we need to adjust for the new sidewalk access down, so we can relocate those. Those pavers do not have any of the engravings on them. They're the blank ones. So if there's a location that is preferred to place them, we can certainly do that.
Well, now I just figured this would be a time to fix it because it's kind of got a low spot where water just sits on that one and then you can't see some of them.
Oh,
'cause
sure.
It gets sandy and.
I think they could be, we could have them be reset. I don't think that would be a big issue. They
So
could
just-
And for the record, we still own more of those bricks that go with those if needed, so.
Oh.
The Booster Club has a supply of them.
Yeah, the only reason I brought it up is because it looked like the sidewalk kind of veers over towards softball and then you come back and, because right now I think it's a straight shot down from the, so it must just be the location of the booth. Which might be why it gets moved over a little bit, but
Sorry, I'm not sure how else to back it up with the mouse here. Here's the plan there. So yeah, there's one extension where that bench is right now, and there's two of those. One of those we need to relocate because of the new sidewalk access.
okay.
But yeah, we could touch that up a little bit. and
Yeah, I think because
have
that
it reset.
softball, the way the softball field comes down now, it pushes a lot of the egg lime or dirt or whatever it is onto that thing. So-
Yeah, you'll notice quite a bit of this green area around softball will be impacted
We'll
with
change it.
construction.
Okay.
So a lot of this hillside and even around the bleachers could be impacted, will likely be impacted with utility installations. We got to bring in new electrical, water. We got to pull water from the area to the new restroom building, construction access, all that stuff.
Yeah, and I get that's not a high priority, but I mean, donors pay money to
Yeah.
do that and they want their names to be seen, so.
Is the equipment shed still the same shed or is that a new shed?
This is that's an existing shed to be preserved.
Okay.
That's all
Oh.
I got.
Jason.
We did have a discussion about our trades class with Ryan Anderson rehabbing that building a little bit, and I talked to Gary also about painting them, just so there's some uniformity and trying to rehab that building, so it looks a little better, and I talked to Ryan Anderson, the high school. You've seen the trophy case.
Oh.
They're fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping this class can
Do something with that.
some work with that.
What's the roof like? Is it?
It's
Brand new.
Okay.
Softer around.
Okay.
Stretch that.
Okay.
Hoping to make it so it's-
I think that's a great idea to involve our students.
Yeah, they did our trophy cases, and they did a great job,
Yep.
so it's a good project all the way around. Do it a lot less expensively and give them real experience, so
Right.
it's kind of a win-win. So
Yep.
hoping to do that this time.
Good.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Wolin is here with FRK, the lead architect, and also BJ Frediers with White's Construction. White's their construction manager on the project.
Yes. Thank you. Board members, thank you for your time this evening. We'd like to just bring you up to speed with where we're at with the 6-7 building and show you some images. And as we prepare to move into the final push for getting the documents out in the street, public hearing, which you set now for January 6th, and then bids will be coming in February. BJ will talk about that here in a minute, but we'll give you an update here and forward then, just like this. There we go. We learn something new every day. I'm of an age, I'm not sure about the rest of you, I will not have any conversation where technology is something that is interesting to get familiar with. We're starting with, from an architectural perspective, we like to start from way back and then move in. So presentation this evening will start from the site plan level and then move into floor plans and go from there. So did I miss a slide? How do I go back? No, I was looking for the schedule. So site plan here shows the location of the site, which you're all familiar with, of course, and where the building will be positioned. You'll see that we're 80th Street on the east side and 8th on the bottom, of course. Some developments that will come along the way as the project moves forward will be some joint city district work on 8th, particularly with that roundabout, and then we'll be putting that new road on the east side of the site, which will connect all the way to the top. But that will be the main access for public to the building. And then the building is oriented with the front toward the southwest without having the corner property initially with the project. That would have been a great place to put the building, of course, of that public presence. But where the building's situated now, we still will have that main front entrance as you come along on the east side of the site and pull into the drive. You'll notice that long serpentine drive path. That's, of course, where parent drop off and pick up, that queuing. Site safety really dictates that we want to separate buses from students. So the buses will all come in from the east. I think I said west before, on the west side where the new road is. East is 80th, and that's where the buses will come in. You'll see that separate site circulation. So we're positioning ourselves to make full use of this portion of the property with allowing for any future work to take place on that side to the south, with where we have the site circulation on the south side of the building here. So if you're familiar with that site, you've driven past it, there is a fair amount of topography change. So the building kind of nestles into kind of the most ideal location on the site. We will have to deal with stormwater detention, so there are detention ponds built into the site as well. So that's the big picture overview of what the site looks like. Before I continue, be happy to entertain any questions or comments that you have as we go through. So feel free to jump in. When we're here previous for a board meeting and kind of listening in, you're not afraid to jump in. So that's wonderful. I really appreciate that.
Did you just-
Does those detention ponds underground or will they be on the property?
They will be on the property. So,
Not underground.
yep, they're hard to see here, but they'll be kind of mostly along the east side where water will be channeled to them. They'll be dry ponds, so they won't be, be dangerous.
Okay.
But the purpose of detention pond is that we're not allowed to let any more water off this site than occurs naturally with the site. So with impervious surfaces on the project, the building itself, the roof, the paving, all that water doesn't soak in, it travels off. We'll capture that and it will go into detention pond. And it during a big rain event, there will be water in the detention pond, and that detention pond will slowly release the water back into the city storm sewer system.
Okay.
So again, it will not be full all the time. It'll
Okay.
only have water in it when there's a big rain event.
Okay.
And they do that with restrictor plates and let only a certain amount of water out.
Okay.
Thank you. Great question.
Mhm.
One of the things that I thought would be good and Superintendent Hupnick and Kevin suggested this as well as we prepped for this meeting tonight, just to kind of remind the board where we were about a year ago and how we progressed through the design phase to the point where we're here tonight, coming to you for construction document approval and moving forward with the project or an update. So about a year ago, we did visioning sessions, and if all of you will remember, that was the time frame of everything was Zoom, right? So hats off to the district and everybody who was involved in that project, because we accomplished a lot of heavy lifting virtually. We had the participants, and then included administrators, both at the district level as well as at the attendance center level, teachers, staff, students, board members, and then the design team with White's Construction as well as your advocate for construction, as your CM. As architects, we sometimes think we're the designer, that we make it all happen. Really and truly, the design is an organic process that comes out of these kinds of discussions with the people who are involved in those sessions. And you can see here on the left, we sent out little manipulatives, little sheets of paper and design ideas. And we had participants actually design the 6-7 building. And we took all those different ideas and we put them into what we call a program, how many square feet for every section of the building. And then as we moved into winter, we began the schematic design phase. There we get a little more intentional about the design, and we have what we call user group meetings, where we actually bring teachers and staff in and make sure we talk about their spaces. And so the ideas that were generated by that visioning process and the design work those team members did translated into actual building layouts. And you'll see this colorful picture here that shows all the different program areas and how those adjacencies work together. And we went through iteration after iteration after iteration to the point when we got to design development phase, when we get even more specific about where casework is going to go and where outlets are going to go. The plans really began to develop more hardline plans and look very similar to the actual layout of the building where it sits now. So we arrived at that point kind of at the beginning of summer. And then during late summer and fall, we were in the process of doing the blueprints for the project, putting the construction documents together that the contractors will use to bid the project and to construct the project. And that's where we ended up with the design where we are at today. So that's just a very quick overview of that whole process and the different stages. You're very familiar with that because we came to you for approvals, but just kind of nice to see that all in one fell swoop as well. Reports were provided, so there's documentation of all of this for the records on the project. So here we are at now with where the floor plan sits. And this is again, all that information we gathered and we put it into the floor plan and to the arrangement of the building. So we're gonna kind of walk through this area by area in a little more detail. But just the big picture, the main entry is toward the bottom here, which if you remember from that site plan faces a little bit southwest and is oriented toward the main site circulation as you come into the project site. There's an events entry, which would be the west side. And that's where you would come in and you would be right near the gymnasium, and then you would lead into the commons area. The commons is really the lifeblood hub of the entire building. And during that visioning session process, we brought the participants in that process. We called them virtual tours. We looked at a lot of different educational facilities really around the country and actually internationally. And what are the key areas of education delivery spaces now? And this sense of a center public core of the building is still critical and key. And you see that in some of your district buildings now where that's the centerpiece, and all program areas stem out from there. So in this case, your food service spills into the commons, which is also then of course your lunchroom. And then the two academic wings shoot out from that commons. Your specials on the main floor, you have library, and on the second floor is art and music, all relate to balconies that look out over that commons. And then your administration areas are also part of that, mainly that entry experience where you'd come in and you'd be at administration or flow into the commons as well. So again, the kind of the lifeblood of the building. And then we'll just quickly go upstairs to the second floor. The gray area shows where there's balcony looking down into that commons area. We'll see some images of that shortly. And then also lead into the second floor of the academic wings. Vertical circulation, that's architect speak for stairs. We do have a number of stair towers which bring people up and down, so flow through the building will work very well, as well as an elevator, of course, for ADA compliance. One of the things to point out, as you can see in this big picture, is each one of these classroom wings, so there's actually 4 classroom wings, double stacked, 2 wings that go out. All of those arrangements of those classes are pretty much identical. You can almost take one and just swap it out. The purpose behind that, we heard that loud and clear from the visioning sessions, was we want this building to be as flexible as possible so classes can be arranged in any way that's going to work best moving forward and as the building changes and adapts over time. There are science classrooms, special needs classrooms, general education classrooms, collaboration spaces, locker banks, all the things that you would need for a full class, full wing education delivery happens on each floor on each of the 2 wings. Here you can also see that on the second level where music is, and that stair that leads down to that lower area.
I have a question. Is the elevator anywhere close to the music department?
The elevator sits right over here, so it is down the way. You'll need to go along this passageway to get to the elevator to get to the lower level.
Okay, I'm just saying, the students with larger instruments and or is the auditorium downstairs and so the piano would have to go down to the performance area, or?
So the performance area, we had a lot of conversations about performance area in the building. So the 6-7 format for this building didn't lend itself to having an actual separate auditorium. So what we have in the commons is this space can be used for performances. So there's a stage plinth on the east side, as well as some balconies. We call them the Juliet balconies because you could do Romeo and Juliet from there. And so the elevator is kind of nicely situated. So if you are bringing those larger instruments, I was a drummer. I've pushed timpani more places than you can ever want to imagine. Then you're coming down to the performance area behind you from that elevator and setting up your instruments there for performance out toward the west. And that.
But acoustically, it's probably not a very good space because isn't it like the commons we have at the high school?
It's similar, except acoustically, it'll work a little bit better because we will have sound absorption ceiling tile in the ceiling at an angle. And then we have open ceiling floating clouds, which you'll see in a moment,
Okay.
which will take that sound and reverberate. So I don't think it'll be as loud and as active as your high school atrium is now
Okay.
for performances.
Okay. So they have an auditorium.
So that's, they can go there for that, yeah.
So Lori, one of the conversations that we had is that performance is there within the 6-7 building.
First time I've seen you in person.
Yes. The conversation with the space and not having a space for an auditorium is that commons area could be a place to perform for the students in the building. It could be your theater, it could be drama type things, singing, band, etc. But any type of formal concert performance.
So the
that might be
parents
for
would come
family
to?
Members would be in an auditorium on site, and you would use the instruments that are already there and transport them.
Okay, so we'd go to another building. We wouldn't have it in this building.
Exactly.
Okay.
Would that cause, because I know there's a lot of scheduling that goes involved with band and all the other activities. Would that cause any compression with high school band and junior high band and then 6th, 7th?
We currently do that.
Okay.
When the 6th grade has
Right.
a concert right now, they schedule it at the high school. We'll work during the school day for them to come over and practice during the school day too. So that's something that we
Okay.
can use to do right now. So I don't see that as being anything.
Thank you.
My inquiries were just if we were gonna have it in the building itself and the convenience of the elevator, et cetera. So, but if we're gonna use the other buildings, I get it.
Since we're asking questions, safety wise, is there going to be line of sight access? Are there going to be any like hidden hallways or rooms or nooks or anything that could be a safety issue?
We try to avoid that the best that we can. And I think you can see by this, this very open commons area and sight lines down each classroom wing where you have just that strong visibility. Sight lines down this corridor as well that leads to gymnasium multipurpose PE spaces. That sight line down to where that stair is in these back areas here. You know, there are always, we can't have everything be completely, but there will be a closed circuit TV system. So CCTV for monitoring everything in the building. And
this might seem really old school, but what about those, you know, those concave mirrors that you can see around corners and
sure, yeah,
reflections?
yep. I
Would
think
that be a
that would be great.
possibility?
For some things like that, we would really encourage the district, get the building built, live in it a year or two, and then maybe identify locations where those kinds of additional safety measures or features could be added. If we presuppose where those go now, we may put them in the wrong place. It might be good to kind of live in the building first and see. But there would be
As long as we have that
opportunities.
ability and as long as we have that money to do so instead of
Exactly.
trying to find it after the fact. So.
Sure, yep.
I don't want to speak for Brett, but he was out of the room when this started, but as when Tom was showing you that timeline, in those beginning phases, as we're talking about design, Brett brought up safety things.
Oh, I hit him hard.
Multitudes
Good
of
job.
times.
Thank you.
So
Did you ask about the bathrooms?
There is a.
Not air, not about the air conditioning, Brett, because that could be one area where there's line of safety or line of sight issues. And I understand it's a bathroom and you don't want everything to be public, but that still needs to be a safe area. So
Oh, there it is. Okay.
I'm glad there's air conditioning. though.
Yeah.
That was good.
Thank you.
Do you want me to go back to that timeline? Sorry.
no, that's fine.
I thought I lost my mouse, but it actually went over there instead.
Can I ask one question?
Please.
You mentioned earlier really quick, locker bays. When you were talking to the user groups, that's something they want, is locker bays?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Rather than having lockers lining the corridor, really just kind of one central locker. But they're not full height lockers. You can see over them. And in fact, we'll see image of that here momentarily.
Like we have at the high school.
I thought one time we were thinking about taking them out of the high school because they're not being used.
Did you take them out?
We have not.
Yeah.
That's what I was just
Are
gonna
they,
ask.
are they
They're not
used very
used
much,
as-
Mr. Pettit?
Not as much high school as they are at.
So the younger
More utilizing.
kids do use them? Okay.
And
I'm
that's,
just-
I'm sorry.
I'm just using the height wise
Right.
at the high school. They're not full size. So you
Right.
can see what's being used at the high school.
Yep.
We're finding that across the country, exactly, the high school level, students are using lockers less, but at that middle school level and below, that there's more lockers.
Especially in the wintertime, yeah.
We do a number of large high school projects, and we put about a third of the number of lockers in the building of the student capacity.
Right.
So we'll go and just look at some of these interior images of this common space. So you'll see again, a lot of sight lines for visibility, a lot of connectivity. We're looking toward what would be the north classroom wing, some CTE spaces with some nice glass looking out so we can see what's going on in those spaces. They can connect to the large area. What I also wanted to point out here is we had a lot of great conversations during the visioning session about creating spaces where students want to be and teachers want to be, where learning happens and teaching happens, a place where you want to be. Daylight is so critical to that. So you'll see throughout these images that there's just a significant amount of daylight that pours in, particularly in this commons, and that just really infiltrates and travels throughout the whole building. I've got a couple of images here at the end we'll pull up that we can kind of fly around these and look at these in a little different kind of three-dimensional panoramic view. But here's looking back toward where that performance space could be, and what we see these two little balconies you can look out down onto the space. And again, it's for cafeteria set up here, but you'll see the corridors wrapping around the upper level and the lower level, and then there and beyond down toward the classroom wings. One thing I really want to point out, which I think is really cool, and had a lot of conversations with Gary about this, but this large bulkhead down the center of the cafeteria commons area takes a bunch of ductwork that's right, mechanical equipment that's right behind this big wall. And we were trying to figure out how can we take these big ducts and these big service infrastructure things and get them out to the classroom wings. So we created this feature where all of that is hidden in this area. It's catwalk. You can walk around up in there. But I don't think you'd want your middle school students to, perhaps. But it's a place that they can service that equipment, but created a anchor point for the ceiling and also work for the infrastructure.
And is that catwalk area gonna be secure?
Yes, yeah, the only way you can get to it is through the mechanical room.
Okay.
Yeah. So kind of coming from the main entry here, you'd come into a secure vestibule, as you see in all of your buildings now. So during the day, the inner doors are locked. Visitors are required to come into your reception area. And then from there, they would be allowed to enter into the building. So all of your offices, receptionists, staff, teacher work area. The nurse is off the main central circulation here, but also has connectivity into work. So there's that supervision there. 3 cot bays, toilet, exam, and storage. And then further back in, we have guidance offices with a separate reception area for the guidance suite. We really find that it's helpful to, if you're a student who's going to seek guidance or someone in that department, that stigma of going into the main office, oh, you're going to have to see the principal. No, that's not the reason you're going there. So a separate, little more discreet entrance for that program area. Special needs programming here at the end, and then banks of toilet rooms. Toilet rooms are really spread throughout the whole building for accessibility, of course. And here's just looking on that main level back toward that main entry, and then the administration entrance point here. And again, how that connects to the central circulation of the building. The media center is right to your right as you enter the building. Part of it is a nice 2-story volume with lots of glazing. That's architecture speak for glass to let a lot of natural light in. And then the other half of the media center is a one-story space with the art rooms being directly above it. And we do have kind of an image of what that looks like as you're inside the media center with the glass coming in for the front of the building. And that one-story area behind and art rooms behind this wall above. Gymnasium space, we have 3 cross courts and then main courts for basketball, volleyball. And flanking behind here are the locker rooms that of course feed into the gymnasiums, as well as outside for outdoor athletics. And then to the north of the gymnasium complex, we had lots of conversations about some larger PE multi-purpose oriented spaces, which could be a future wrestling, could really be for PE purposes, for athletic practice and workout. And of course, we know back when I was going to school in PE, when you got the scooters out, the little things, that was always fun. That was, now you go to gym class and you're doing yoga and you're doing Pilates and you're doing archery.
Do we need to
all
bring the
sorts
scooters
of-
back?
That would be fun
I'm
for
all
me.
about it, yeah.
You know? So having spaces that allow for just a multitudinal types of PE programming is really critical, but also very flexible for any future adaptation you'd like them to be. They also serve a double purpose for storm shelter places where students can go in severe weather events. We are not doing full FEMA rated, but these are built to those standards, but we're not we're not required by law to secure that full FEMA rating, but built to withstand that for sure. And then just an interior view of the gymnasium. So it would also be for competition events at the JV level. However, the district, there's not a school district, I don't think, in the state of Iowa that has enough gym spaces, right? So you will use this gym quite a bit. Then outside the gym is that stairway that leads up to the upper level. Again, natural light. There's a skylight that brings light, pours down into that corridor. Moving upstairs, then we have the art looking down over the commons, and then above the administration area there's where your music programming is, vocal music, instrumental music, large ensemble, and small ensemble, and also practice rooms, and then instrument storage and uniform storage, and then those vocal music storage. And offices here as well. And here you're on that balcony, looking back toward the classroom wings with your art here to the right, windows looking down into the library, or that view out into the commons. Now, an architectural intern in our office who was helping me with these said, "I see you put a rollerblader in there," and I guess I did. There's a roller. I would not advise the middle schoolers to rollerblade on the balcony, but I did happen to put a rollerblader in there.
So I have a question. You were talking about FEMA rating.
Yes.
What would it take to get FEMA rating?
Paperwork. Yeah. The problem with FEMA, I shouldn't say problem, it's wonderful. So we want to build these shelters. With FEMA, basically the whole project grinds to a halt as FEMA spends a significant number of months reviewing, approving, and so that would really, it adds.
So they can't do
almost
that while it's going on?
They can't start that process till everything is complete. They get those documents and then we go through that process. So we are at FEMA level for design. We just don't have that specific paperwork that goes along with that. And finally, to the classroom wing. So again, each one of these footprints are exactly the same. So this is ×4. I did show the north classroom wings because we do have the CTE spaces here at the bottom end of this classroom wing that again is related to that commons. Sets of doors that lead you into the circulation, lockers in the center. Education, the educators have a teacher prep area, professional development area here. There are some glass box conferencing spaces, and then some open collaboration at the end. At the middle school level, it's very clear, and this is not just unique to Southeast Polk, but it's pretty much every district. Collaboration and spaces where students can go just to kind of huddle up and do group work at the middle school level really needs to have a lot of visibility and control and connectivity there. At the high school level, you're more apt to just let kids kind of do their own thing, even at the lower level, but at a middle school level, you really want to have that supervision and those sight lines. So those collaboration spaces allow for that immediately adjacent to the teacher spaces. So we'll take a look at some of these interior. Here is the locker bank. So you again see they're not full height lockers, and you have that visual connection above them. Also note that there are, we call these clear story windows, so a little bit higher windows where you can't see into the classrooms, but we have natural light that pours in from the outer bank windows and finds its way into the center area. You also see where we have the staircase that has glazing, that has windows at the top that will let natural light down and penetrate into the lower level, as well as, of course, at the upper level. This is looking at the very end of that classroom wing out to a nice big bank of windows where that soft seating collaboration space is, and then a couple of glass box conferencing spaces for teachers, for students to use, and that connectivity to the adjacent classrooms. Here's another view looking back toward those glass conference rooms, the teacher development area. And then off to the left here is a science classroom where we're using some garage doors that have glass in them that can open up and close and just have that direct connectivity between the science classrooms and can spill out into these collaboration areas as well.
I'm looking at you, Kevin. The garage doors again. Yeah.
And here's a typical classroom where you see that clear story glass and connectivity to the circulation. You have not made any decisions about your furniture yet. We're presupposing and populating these spaces with furniture that we think works. Between now and then, when you start thinking about furnishing the building, there's a strong connection between the world of design that we as architects live in and the people who are doing education furniture. It's just amazing, the things that there are out there now. So that'll be a really exciting conversation for the district as you think about furnishing the building.
Can you go back to the classroom wing photo?
Absolutely. This one or a couple of back?
Couple back. Where it shows the classrooms and the.
Oh, the floor plan.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that one.
Yes, sure.
Maybe I'm the only one that has a problem with this, but there's some more locker bays. I guess I'm having a problem with this because being a former educator, or any of you, we've heard from two parents tonight. To me, that's just like, we might as well just put a ring around it. That's where the fights are going to happen. And kind of like when they go to a bus, when we line the buses up in rows, that's where they go. When we have, I know kids in the wintertime wear coats, but I'm just totally against locker bays because of it's such an easy place for kids to congregate and to fight, unfortunately. And we have two here tonight, but there's hundreds of people.
Yeah, I don't think that it's necessary to have them, and it's going to cause more issues.
It's just it's a hiding place.
Right, and that's one of the only areas it's not line of sight because you can't see zigzag through the lockers. And it's nice that you can see over top, but that still isn't going to do anything.
I just, being a person that used to supervise before school, after school, in between classes. I mean, in Des Moines schools, they were on walls. It was still bad. But now they're in bays where they can just, I don't know, it's just, you almost have to have a teacher on either side and maybe all four sides.
Are there alternatives to for places to put coats and because I get what he's saying. I'm not necessarily on board because I know the high school is trying to get rid of them because most of the people in the high school carry their stuff. But in the middle school, it's a little I don't think anybody in the high school wears a coat anymore, do they, Steve? Just you. Well, only the smart people, yeah. But in middle school, it's a little different still, I think. I mean, we're still talking sixth grade. So I get what you're saying. I guess that would be the question is alternatives to lockers where they can at least put personal property or, because I think, some kids, their moms still make them carry that coat in at least.
Yeah, I agree with Brett that we need a place. It's just the bays that I have a
Yeah.
problem with,
No, I had that on my list
Yeah.
too.
Do
So
we have
so I-
room where we can put it on the walls? Is there any place that we could do that?
I mean, are you not doing it because you're trying to get classrooms to be as big as possible, so you don't want to take that space away from the classroom size? Is that the reason they're not the old fashioned way in the hallways?
There are several reasons.
Yeah.
One is it makes it possible for your classrooms to be that much bigger.
Right.
Because
I
you're not
understand
taking that real estate there. Now you're trading that real estate for another area.
Right.
But what we have experienced in our work with designing schools and talking with many districts, there are benefits to having the locker bays being in one place where it's easier to supervise a group of students or where the lockers are, as opposed to having strings of lockers down all sorts of corridors. So when students are accessing their lockers, the supervision is a little bit more difficult, whereas if they're in one location, it's possible.
Yeah, but in one location, there's all these bays. And
Sure, yeah.
the middle ones are just hiding spots. I mean, at least if the lockers are in the old fashioned way on the walls,
You have
you
that
can look
visual.
down the hallway, you can see a group of students congregating.
Yep.
Versus going into these, in between these lockers and just having at it. I
Yeah.
mean,
Let me. So
How tall are these locker bays? I guess you're kind of getting to that because to me it looks like you could see straight across, unless somebody's gonna like squat down and attack somebody like crawling across the floor. You can see across there pretty well, can't you?
the lockers are 36-inch high lockers and they sit on a 4-inch base. So it'll be about this.
40 inches.
Yeah, 40 inches to the top. And the final reason why the locker bays seem to work in some of the designs that we do is we hear really loud and clear from educators, leaders in educational thought design, that sense of what I had when I was going to school, just long corridors lined with lockers, we call them double loaded corridors, is a very institutional sense and look for a school. And we're trying to move away from that educational institutional look and more toward a collaborative, connected, daylight filled, not kind of cluttered with some of those vestiges of the way education has been delivered.
We're just having a problem from 6th grade on up to 12th grade. We're having a problem with violence.
I think one thing
Yeah.
to add to that, Rick, that we haven't discussed yet, but I think would be also an important facet of this conversation will be the bell schedules. And, obviously, as we look at a 6-7 building and transporting students from different configurations, and it gives us an opportunity to relook at the bell schedule. Obviously, you're gonna have times when students come in and when they exit the building, but looking at bell schedules to minimize the amount of time that a large number of students might be out there together. I agree, we've been in schools for a long time and know what those things can look like. But I also know there's some things that we can put into place that won't solve it completely, but can reduce the chances and opportunities. We haven't had those conversations yet, but I think we'll have to keep that in mind.
I just think if we do something like this, you have to have minimum of 2 people in those spaces at all times when kids are I mean, that's such an invite. I don't know. It's just, to me, it's not addressing the problems our district's having currently. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You want to go ahead with the presentation for now?
Okay. One more interior image that I'd like to show is what a typical science classroom would look like. So there are 8 of these throughout the whole building. What's behind you and you see this bay at the ceiling level is where that overhead sectional door rolls up and is hidden in the ceiling. And again, the furniture we're showing is graduated, taller, standing or kind of stool type seats in the back, down to more normal height tables in the front. The educator is at the front of the classroom. We do show a fume hood here. Between each of these science classrooms is some storage and some teacher prep area. But again, you've not selected furniture yet, but this would be kind of what we would envision. And this also shows a nice view of just the amount of glass and the daylight that comes into this space as well. So looking at the exterior of the building, we used to call this bird's eye view. Now we call it drone view. So we're looking from the southwest down toward the front of the building. Each of the classroom wings jut out to the north and to the east. This block of classrooms, we were just looking inside there, is where the science classrooms are. You can see these raised portions on the roof that allows that daylight to spill into the building. And then the gymnasium box here toward the east or toward the west side of the building, locker rooms and the PE spaces and service, kitchen, servery, those areas there. And then the center core. And you can really get this visual sense again from the floor plan as well, but that central core commons, that connectivity, that those sight lines, that security, all happens from that central core. And then just looking on the back side of the building from basically what would be the northeast, back at these classroom wings that would face out toward 80th, and then the back of house areas where the service entrance is.
Is like this gold
Right here.
part that looks like a lot of glass right there.
Those are the science classrooms.
Okay, and so that's 2 levels, but there's nothing facing east or west. It's all glass like we have in the commons, or we have a big stream of light.
So this front face is toward the south, a little bit toward the west. The true west facing portions of the building don't have much windows because they're those PE spaces or locker
Okay.
rooms. And then a lot of light toward the east.
And nothing totally on the east that's like a full wall of the sun rising sunlight is what I'm.
Yes, there will, you'll need to have shades for
okay.
mitigating that.
Okay.
Yeah. We do have in all the classrooms more of a slot window. So it's not a full bank of glass like you see in the science classrooms for most of the classrooms. And here are just some images of what that looks like as well. You can see those vertical slots for the windows.
Are those tinted or not tinted?
They have a little bit of tint to them for solar heat gain reduction, but shades will need to be used for full being able to shade the sun. And I wanted to, here's some information that BJ can lead you through, and then I do have a couple of more kinetic images if you'd like me to show those.
Good evening, board. Again, I'm BJ Frieders with White's Company. One slide is all you get from me, so we'll keep it short and sweet here. So timeline we have up here is kind of where we're going with the project as we finish up the drawings. So we're going to put it out to bid on street to bidders on the 7th of January after we have our public hearing and all that with the board. We're having the bids due on February 3rd. And then from there, we get to work on procuring materials, all the fun things that we need to do in order to build the project. But we'll actually get started in April or hopefully sooner if the weather breaks earlier, start with the site grading. And then it's essentially a 2-year process to complete the project. So we'll be ready for the 24-25 school year. So a lot of things will happen between now and then, of course. The biggest issues that we're still dealing with, last time I was here, we were talking about supply chain issues and all that. None of that has gone away, but it's all accounted for within our schedule. And so the key is getting the bids back and getting contracts approved and getting that clock ticking, because believe it or not, it still takes 9-10 months to get precast and steel. So granted, we got a lot of work to do before we're ready for it, but all that's accounted for and in the schedule, and we're looking forward to actually get things going here, not just talking about a design. So That's all I've got for you, unless you have any questions for me.
Just exit out of the, oops.
Baseball, softball.
There we go. I just wanted to show you, oh, it's gonna do it all by itself. So here is that front entry. And the reason I wanted to show you this is you could see that as you enter the school, there's a canopy that protects you from the rain. But then what you can't see is their higher roof above you, but allows for some natural light to filter down where the actual doors are and the windows into that academic or into the administration wing. When you're looking down at either end of the building, you can see how those wings spread out from you on either side, and the big full bank of glass that is into that library area. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. And then a couple of images that we have inside the commons area. So here you're looking from the CTE spaces right over here to your right, and the glass that looks down from those spaces out over to the commons or the glass balcony here. So you have just this nice commanding view again for just supervision for administrators, but also just that nice connectivity and that look down onto the floor of the commons area over toward the front entry where the art rooms are, the two-story library, administration off to the right. And again, you see all that nice glass. We're kind of talking about the acoustical conditioning of the space. So each of these floating planes is an acoustical ceiling. So we'll mitigate the sound there, as well as sound will have an opportunity to get above there and bounce around and kind of dissipate as well. We envision that these large planar spaces here would be projecting areas for daylight projectors. So I think just 1,000 uses for this big commons area aside from cafeteria. And then another image was just that same space looking from one end. Some student seating along this wall here, that large amount of glass, see the ceiling above, and the net connectivity to the circulation around you on all sides. So I would be very happy to respond to any other questions that you have, and I really appreciate the feedback that you provided during the presentation. We're just very excited about the project and can't wait to get going.
Thank you.
I'll start off. I just got a couple of things really quick. If you can really quick, go back to the main entrance. Your bird's eye view of the.
Yeah.
I think it's buried somewhere at the beginning where you have the schematic of.
Oh, so back to the PowerPoint. See, that's what I did. I exited out of it. Is it one of these up here?
I'll tell you which slide here in a second to help you out if it helps.
That's RDGs. Okay, very good. So
It's like slide 5, I think.
the floor plan of the main part of the building.
Yeah, it's 5 or. Anyway, so when you look at the front, you come up and then you got your first layer of doors.
Yes. You want me to zoom into that administration one? That'd be a little bit more helpful.
Yeah, if you know where that's at right away, I guess.
This one?
Yeah, right there. So where the arrow is, it's saying that main entry.
Yes.
With our door buzzer system, how would that work on this one? Would they stay outside, buzz it, or do they go in through the door first? And then before they go in to the office door, do they buzz? Or I guess where's the buzzer system?
So you have a lot of flexibility here, but we do have, I believe we have iPhones, so you could have somebody out here outside completely before they're allowed into the building, and then they would be buzzed in from the receptionist. Or these doors could be left open during the day when school's in session, but the inner doors would be locked tight so that visitors could come in here and be, remain until they're allowed in the building, into the reception. Or these doors and that door could be open, so a visitor could come in and then check in with the receptionist, and then the receptionist could allow that person to come into the building. During passing times, these doors would be
Why would we
open.
want the outdoor doors open?
Well, he's
That
just
way
throwing
they-
out.
They just get right into the office, boom.
Yeah, I would envision that it would be just like all of our.
Just like
other
the
buildings
regular-
set up
okay,
to be
that-
outside, so that
And that's
both
where I was-
sets of doors would be locked, so there's two different buzzers.
Yeah,
systems.
okay, I was more just mentally
Yeah.
thinking with the new building, make sure that we're on the, because yeah, I definitely don't want to leave the doors open, but yeah.
Somewhat similar to what Mitchellville setup is. You can either turn and go into the direct lobby, or you can go straight into the.
Okay, and I thought that's kind of how we talked when we first did this, so yeah, I'm okay with the setup. I just was more making sure that we had that in place.
Educators would have the fob system and can gain access through a series, different doors throughout the building. But yeah, visitors, so sounds like really keep them outside here until they're even let into the
Yeah.
building. Yeah.
The second thing is I know we really haven't, this is kind of premature, but we haven't talked about SROs in this building, but is there going to be somebody other than the office? We have, at the high school, we have a person that kind of monitors who comes and goes. It's not the secretaries. Would that be similar to this building?
Yeah, that would be a question for us and not.
Okay.
But yeah.
Alright. Well, I didn't know, there wasn't a spot for him, so I guess that's kind of what why I brought that up is.
Yeah.
Is that something that would be like up by that yellow spot in that little cove there, or?
Well, I see what you're saying. I would envision it being in the central office pod there.
In the, okay, yeah, and we don't, I mean, it's more,
Think of like Spring Creek, how they have like the window right there connected to the office space.
Okay.
I would see it set
okay,
up like that. That's the way we discussed it.
all right,
So the design intent for the way the building will be constructed and available to the district upon completion is that flexibility. So, you know, these offices aren't designated. You can have them be whatever you
Sure.
would like them to be. The reception area can be set up however you would like the reception area to be set up.
okay. The other, Rick kind of talked about the lockers. I'm not as concerned about the lockers. If my next question, cameras, are we setting this up to have multiple cameras?
Yes. Yep.
Okay,
Full
And then-
CCTV throughout the whole.
and
building.
will it be obviously somebody that'll be monitoring them? Because I think that as some of the, not saying that cameras, you know, that's the only way we monitor those areas, but cameras are obviously important when we're doing something like this, because it does add to our safety piece. Let's see, window, and I think you've already answered this one, but I just want to clarify. So the pictures that we're seeing of the furniture isn't exact, but what about the colors? You did so good on changing the colors of the school back to Southeast Polk color, but I think you have a fetish of red and blue. I'm just gonna throw that out there. So,
I found somebody, Dr. Lupnick, who wants to be on the furniture selection
There you
committee.
go.
I'll be more than happy as long, and I'm a blue fan because I went to Bondurant, so I'm not gonna knock blue too bad, but red and blue together, just,
No, it's a similar.
I'm not, so I'm just gonna throw that one out there just to make sure that you have it in your mind that red and blue are, no.
So
That's a great segue to just a comment about the color scheme. We're not in a position to let you know what the interior colors are going to be yet. We have to wait until all the bid package contractors submit their products so we know what's available, and then we pick from their color palettes. We get to that point, we'll probably tap into some of the visioning committee and the user group and administrators to have a group of people who will make selections about the color schedule, the finishes inside the building. And as you can imagine, we try to keep that to not a huge group. If there are 10 people on the color selection committee, there will be 11 options they want. So we want to, but that process will come. But I think I wrote down red and blue with a big X through them.
Well, it depends on how you
Sounding
use
things,
them. It
yeah.
just, but no, I just, yeah.
Well, that's a
I
good
might have
segue. I
overspoke
had a,
this, sorry.
no,
yes.
that's okay. I had a question about in the commons area, you said there was additional student seating. We don't need to go back to it. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
You said that there's additional student seating, but they were facing the wall.
Mhm.
Is that just your idea or is that
Just
something
our,
that's
just our
actually gonna
idea,
happen?
yeah.
Okay.
So we're showing some tall seating there. I think we do have counters built in. But as the project gets under construction and the district puts together that furniture selection committee, at that point, they may say, and that's going to happen fairly soon after the project gets out of the ground for lead times for ordering. They may say, that tall kind of seating against that wall, we don't want that at all. Let's take that out of the project. We'll just do furniture only in there.
Yeah, I would just be super curious to see what student wants to sit face. I mean, sometimes facing the wall is great because you don't have to see anyone else. I'm just kind of curious what you're a student. What do you think?
I mean, I think it depends on what they're using it for. Like, if a student is like in the commons and they want to study, some might prefer to not have the distraction like other students, but I think it really just depends on the situation.
Okay, thank you.
Remember that book Quiet that came out a couple of years ago about all the introverts in the world? Architects were all introverts. So
Yeah, I
that's
got
where
you, me
exactly
too.
where I would
Yeah.
sit. I would sit at that spot and I'd be very, very happy. Yeah. But that there are some flexibility.
Okay.
Did that get the
Yep.
question?
Thank you.
Brett, any other questions? You should have. a
No,
number.
I think I've offended you enough. Don't take that personally. I'm just joking. Hopefully, you know that red and blue.
Absolutely, yeah. We're-
Maybe you have some.
Black and gold, maybe. It's kind of a thing.
Any other questions for him? Go ahead.
I have a couple. I noticed on slide 2, and you don't have to go back to it if you don't want to. There are some dotted lines on the property, one in an oval on the northwest area, and then kind of the similar to the north of the building.
The track.
Yeah, is that like future track, like an idea of where that might fit? And then I see that kind of on the northeast or the east side of the building between the two wings as well. Does that indicate some future idea or space?
The site plan is completely laid out with outdoor athletics that were identified during the design phases. We don't show all that detail here simply because it's a little bit more graphically representational, but all the outdoor athletics and PE requirements that were called for are part of the project. And again, that water detention on that side as well. And I believe that we decided that we didn't need to bring full rolls of drawings and everything tonight, but we could make the drawings, the construction set available if anyone is interested in looking through those with a little more detail. Those are public, those are your drawings. This is your project.
So Bridget, when he's talking about, he's saying it'll be graded for that, but for the future. That's not
Right.
part of this project now. There's no track and football field or whatever with this, right?
So we have practice fields and other outdoor things, but yeah, that actual track would be a future thing. Thank you for that clarification.
One other athletic related, I noticed that the girls' athletic locker room is smaller than the boys. Is there a reason for that?
Definitely.
Football uniform storage.
Okay,
If
so
I
just
remember
the
correctly.
size of the equipment?
I believe so. I have to go back and look at that.
Okay.
So we're gonna have to get a women's sport with a lot of equipment then.
Right.
Okay, got it. On it.
Do some field hockey.
There you go.
And just sixth grade we don't have the athletics through the sixth grade, but seventh grade, we only have very few, right? So it's not like all sixth and seventh can participate in athletics anyway, so.
Well, maybe with the new building, we can look at that.
Some of what was
Say Jason's
sized.
gone, he may have doubts.
Some of it was sized as well as for future program changes, or if this building would ever become an 8-9 building or something along
Yeah.
those lines.
Okay.
Particularly those two large PE spaces case you did have a wrestling program that would be important or other kinds of things like that.
Now, those detention ponds, are they gonna be fenced? Because sometimes they will have water in them, or we just
Yeah,
gonna leave that
typically they're
open?
not fenced, right. So the event of having a significant amount of water in there would be a couple of hours at most, and typically it's not going to be that much water. They're built for worst case scenario, and that water will drain out.
Centennial has one in the front, if you ever noticed. And they really, the only time that it's full is when it's a
Could be rain.
torrential downpour and it's gone within a day. So
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else?
now, I do want to say though, from the beginning concepts to where you're at now, I think it's very well put together and appreciate your guys' time and putting it. Even though I give you a hard time about the red and blue, it really looks nice.
I think we have to have one classroom that's got red and blue furniture in there. We'll bring you in there first.
Fine, go ahead.
Maybe that'll be the SRO area. You know?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the learning recovery updates. Llewellyn. Thank you.
Your kids will be able to come back and enjoy the-
Well, good evening, board. While we
Yeah.
open that, we will transition our discussion around learning recovery. Learning recovery, of course, has been an ongoing endeavor as we move through the pandemic. Okay, I'm sorry. You're signing in as you. Okay. So tonight I wanted to give you an update as to where we are in the process. We know that the learning recovery plan has multiple facets to it, and those facets actually work together. We'll talk about those in the presentation, but there's a health and safety component, there's a social emotional learning component, and there's an academics and curriculum component. And it's really hard to talk about one without talking about all three because they are interconnected. We do talk about health and safety, and we have shared that. Also, I was here earlier at the beginning of the school year to talk about social emotional learning, and we will continue to talk about that. Tonight's focus, though, is an update regarding academics and curriculum. So, oh, yeah, that would be great. Thank you. So as we look at learning recovery through the lens of academics and curriculum, we wanted to review some of the things that schools had learned specifically during Hurricane Katrina. Because there have been a few, while we've never experienced what we've had with COVID, there have been some instances where schools have been closed for a longer period of time. And as a result, and following those students over time and looking at their learning recovery, there have been some lessons learned. And one of those lessons is that the mental health concerns that we're seeing as a result of COVID will be with us for a while. So I appreciate the conversations that we've had. And while we look at physical and functional things in regards to how students are expressing themselves, I think it's also important to look at underlying ways and a lot of teaching moments as to how we do manage our feelings and how we do interact with others. And this will be a long-term effort that will be wrapped into our learning plan. We also know that some equity gaps were revealed during the pandemic, and without paying specific attention to those and specific focus on those areas, that those will persist. And that was learned through some previous closures. Another one, and we'll talk about this a little bit, they use some fancy terms, but they're talking about co-requisite rather than prerequisite teaching. And in Hurricane Katrina, they made an effort to go back and teach everything that was lost and then pick up where they left off. And what they found were bigger gaps in learning as a result. And so we're going to talk about a model called accelerated learning, and that is co-requisite teaching, which we'll talk about some more. And that, which we know, our recovery plan will have some common principles, but it'll look different as we implement at pre-K, as we implement at elementary levels, middle levels, and high school levels, because students are impacted differently. So again, to reiterate the learning acceleration, traditionally the remediation model was used where you would do all of the work that they missed before you moved forward. And the research is showing that learning acceleration has better end results when we look over time. And so we will continue to give students access to grade level work and then provide scaffolds to wrap around the things that they missed. So if they missed some things in a certain area, we move forward with the curriculum and then we go back and reteach, we pre-teach, we extend that unit to include the standards they may have missed, but we continue to provide grade level content for students and put in additional scaffolds as necessary. So as I mentioned at the beginning, it has 3 specific components that are very interconnected. Tonight's focus will be around academics and curriculum. And I'm not going to read through all of these, but these are the key components as we brought a team of lead teachers and model teachers, teacher leaders together to review what the current best practice was around learning recovery. These were some of the key components that emerged from a result of that study. And through these key components, the team did identify 4 actions that we wanted to focus on in our learning recovery plan for academics. The idea of collaborative teams, the use of data, instructional coaching and teacher leadership, and a focus on core instruction. So I'm going to talk just a little bit around those, but I would also like you to notice that I learned how to put a ram in a snow globe.
Nice.
Yes, so my team was either amused or very tired of me. I forgot the last one on there. Sorry, I was so excited about the ram in the snow globe. That's what I thought. Okay. No, one more. Okay, very good. So I forgot the last bullet there, and those are extended learning opportunities. So looking beyond the school day, we have some learning to recover, and it's going to take more than just 8 to 3, 8 to 4 in order to get that done. Okay. So again, that first one was collaborative teams. We've talked about our renewed commitment to professional learning communities. We've talked about our very energizing day of professional learning on October 15th, where we had the PLC Solution Tree Institute come to us. It was a great day. Teachers very fired up, have some great actions moving forward. Our teams working together is one of the best assets that we have. And we weren't able to capitalize on that during the different pathways in the school closure. So really, embracing that and getting back and taking advantage of those teams that focus on school culture, but really an increased emphasis on specificity and that focus, because we're going to really have to figure out what it is that we need to work on for learning recovery and be very precise with that so that we're providing students all the things they need to be successful. And then as teams looking at the most effective ways possible to intervene and extend that student learning. The use of data, again, we aren't going to know what that unfinished learning is if we don't have some data in place to find out where are those areas. So when we look at our data, are there some gaps? And, there were some places that we thought there might be gaps, and the kids were receiving that information really well, whether they were in a remote pathway or whether they were face-to-face. But that data is so critical to give us insights as to what was retained and what was not retained during our school closures and pathway changes. And then, as you know, we have a wonderful structure of teacher leadership here at Southeast Polk. And that was another asset that we have that we weren't able to capitalize on namely because we pulled a lot of those teacher leaders to provide instruction for students in the remote pathway. And so now that we have that structure back in place, people are really embracing it. And, you know, through this, I think we recognize some of the things that we truly value. And one of the things that we really valued was collaboration and working with each other to move forward. So capitalizing with instructional coaching and teacher leadership, and that has been a high priority for us moving forward, and a strong structure of that coaching and feedback to move ahead. And then that focus on core instruction, again, whether we're returning through a pandemic or just in traditional instruction, we'll never be able to intervene our way to success. We have to have a strong core in place so that it minimizes the number of students that might need follow-up and that we might need to provide additional support. So really investing in that core so that our intervention systems are manageable and more effective for the kids who need that. So this is a model that we've talked about before. I know we have some new board members, but really addressing this model as we move through the learning recovery and academic success plan. We know that we have priority standards that are provided by the curriculum unit. Those are decided upon by teacher teams and revisited each year during our revision work. From those standards, we determine learning goals for the students. And then the success criteria. What will it look like if students are able to demonstrate knowledge of being able to know and being able to do that standard? And then we put in assessments either at the formal level or the informal, checking for understanding as we move along, and then providing feedback. Here's where you are in relationship to the learning goal, and here's what you need to do next in order to move forward. And that is a continuous cycle that we rely on as we identify those gaps in learning and attempt to not only fill those gaps, but accelerate that learning through the current school year. Here's a big long slide that I am also not going to read to you. But we know that earlier we talked about the students, that some of the student groups had more challenges during the pandemic. So our certain learning group students with individual education plans, students who are learning English, those who may come from economic disadvantage, foster care, homeless youth, et cetera, they're going to need every single thing that we have in our learning plan and more. So we're going to need to be able to look beyond the school day. You know, we can't take them out of core and provide their intervention, because then they're missing the core of all the students moving forward. So looking beyond the school day, looking before and after school, you heard principals talk with school improvement plans about win time, what I need, intervention time, flexible times for students to meet. But we are really putting an increased emphasis on the extended learning before school, after school, Saturdays. I know the high schools had, and junior high have had students coming in on Saturdays, and I'm putting together some data collection around the students who attended the summer school that we had at the elementary level. So I have that first data point, and we'll continue to monitor that as the year goes on. So with that, I'm going to throw something out for us to think about tonight. Wanted to just put this out and share it with the board, that as we look at the ESSER funds or the CARES funds, we know that a certain percentage of that is earmarked for academic recovery and for learning recovery. So we know that we have additional our students who need that additional support. And Mr. Horton has been here, and we've talked about having the building subs full-time that will provide that support where we're not able to fill all the positions. So his thinking actually had me thinking a little bit more, well, what would it look like if we also had learning recovery specialists in our building? So these would be not full-time contracted positions, but similar to a sub position where it was temporary, and they would provide opportunities during MTSS and the instructional coaching in order to support student learning. I also think about extended learning, and it's wonderful, but we're all like, everyone's exhausted. So the idea of thinking, okay, I've taught all day long. Now I'm going to teach an extra 2 or 3 hours. I'm going to come in on Saturday mornings, which people do. I'm going to give up time during the summer. You know, that's great, but also thinking flexibility. If I had a learning recovery specialist, maybe they want to be home when their kids get home from school. So maybe they'll come in at 7 and they can see the kids before school starts. Or maybe they want to be there when their kids are going to school and they might not come in until later in the day, but they stay till 5 or 6 and help those students who need help. So it would provide some flexibility before and after school, and also within the school day to provide additional support during multi-tiered systems of support. And there is a 20% carve out for learning loss. So Mr. Bacom shared that with me and I jumped right on that. So looking at the best investment of those funds that will give us a return on student learning and student success with their studies. So this is a model just for consideration at this time. I haven't shared it with the principals yet. I was going to do that next Tuesday, so surprise. But this is just something that we've been considering and talking about. So looking at potentially 1 position for each elementary in Spring Creek, 2 positions at the junior high, 3 positions at the high school. If we were to hire on the same hiring plan as subs with the same kind of leave opportunities, that would be an approximate cost of $300,000 per semester. You know, is that something we look, and CARES is long-term. So when is the best time? If this is a model that we think would support our learning recovery, is it next semester? Is it next year? You know, do we look at some more data? But I think it's time for us to start considering that option and start to think about some of the possibilities of providing teacher expertise with working with students who might need that additional support to make up for the gaps in their learning. So putting that out there as a proposal we can discuss tonight, but it really is just at the initial thought phase as we move forward. So I just want to close and then we can open up for any questions, is that learning recovery is very complex. And so along with that, we need to make sure that with a learning recovery plan, we also have a solid professional learning plan in place for teachers. So having that plan to address the needs of students as they do return to school full time. And the overarching goal of our professional learning is that commitment to all means all, those equitable practices to meet the needs of all learners. And we have shared that professional development plan when we talked about the school improvement plan, but I wanted to include that in tonight's presentation because that ongoing professional learning will be critical as we continue to work and support our students. So that is what I wanted to share with you tonight. From the academic perspective, we know that it will be ongoing and we'll continue to revisit those parts. And again, I wanted to start that consideration for learning recovery specialists.
So we'll have another discussion on the ESSER funds piece. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
That'll be ongoing.
This is me putting it on the radar for us,
Well, yeah, I was
to
just gonna
think
save you
about.
some,
Yeah.
some off the cuff questions in, so, okay, I'll write them down.
Well, I do have a comment about that because my concern is that if we have extended learning and you have students who are already at some sort of disadvantage, having them in school longer is not going to be a good idea. So I like the idea of having a learning recovery specialist that has flexibility in off hours, so that then the students can get a break from school and then come back and learn, or however it works out best for each student.
Absolutely. And sometimes, you know, we like to capitalize on kids who might get dropped off early or who don't get picked up, but you have to have a break with learning and socializing and movement
Or else
and
it
all
won't
those
get
types
absorbed
of
into
things.
their brain. It's
Right.
just out. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
This is, I think it's a dropout prevention piece, right?
Correct.
Just to, Dr. Latham will be here to talk about the programming, but just from the money side of things, we have, I think there's some questions before about where Southeast Polk is with the dropout prevention percentages. We are at the maximum 5% of what our district costs would be. So it's about $2.5 million. We have about half of that in carryover. So our ask for property taxes this year will be about to the tune of $1.2 million through property taxes for dropout prevention program. But as far as programming, so questions or excuse me.
I had a question about property taxes, just
Yes.
curious. Is that going to raise the property tax amount or does that keep it solid or?
This is just one component of our overall composite tax rate.
Right.
We'll manage that rate so it will not go up. It will
Okay.
not go up.
Not go up. Thank you. Okay.
One other comment if I could. If blue and red furniture is on sale and has a Groupon, we might buy it.
You're such a bargain shopper, Kevin.
Clearance time.
Kevin, if this was your house, would you have red and blue in your house?
I've already
Well, never
proposed it to
mind.
me.
I don't want to know. I don't wanna-
They didn't pass that. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about the at-risk plan. And again, for our new board members as well, is that we have 4 components of the at-risk plan and those have not changed. The overarching ideas haven't changed. What we do underneath, we continually adjust as we move forward to provide ongoing supports for our students. So that first area is intensive counseling. And we know that our guidance counselors provide in-class lessons and have a curriculum. We have advisory at the secondary level, but we also have some intensive counseling groups. It could be around, I'm anxious about coming back to school. And so I might have a small group about what that looks like coming back. I might be new to Southeast Polk and I'm having a hard time making friends. I might have had loss in my family and we have a grief group where we can come share. So intensive counseling are those small groups that are targeted for specific student needs. And that is one component. We have some academic intervention and support that's within our at-risk plan. And that's what you'll see with our reading specialists, and some of those support folks are covered through at-risk. Credit recovery and credit expansion. And so when we look at the DMAC consortium, when we look at Edgenuity, part of those costs are covered through our at-risk dollars and our at-risk budget. And then our harbor programming as well, where we look at expeditionary and cross-disciplinary learning, and the staff that provide that support are within our at-risk plan. This is the support structure. Not all of these support positions are funded through at-risk. Some are partially funded, and that funding is graded. But this is a support structure that allows us to implement the goals of the at-risk plan that come from each of those areas. At this time, we're not proposing any change to the big areas. One area underneath that we'll be looking at as a part of our at-risk plan is putting together a task force to take a look at chronic absenteeism for students who are missing a great deal of time, and looking at some solutions in that area and how we can support students who might not be in that position or feeling that comfort level in coming to school each day, and how we can look at that and build those relationships to get our kids here. So that is one area that fits within the structure of our at-risk plan, but will be a new component that we'll be addressing moving forward.
Any questions?
I have 2.
Okay.
So you mentioned reading specialists. Are there math specialists as well? Because on here it says reading and math interventionists.
We do have math interventionists at the high school, and then we do have some, but they're not in at-risk funding. We have some Title I math support at our Title I buildings as well.
Okay.
Yes.
got it. And we're talking about intensive counseling. Can our guidance counselors handle all of that, or is that something that you're going to put on the table at next meeting to get more counselors?
Well, and with the at-risk, you can't pay for the full counseling costs. You can only pay for part of that. So we really take a look at the counselor's schedule and see how much time they spend in the classroom, and then how much time that would look like for intensive counseling. So a few things that we look at, as well as staffing and positions. We look at some of our Ulvaeus and PBIS and how we can get that into the classroom so that some of those classroom topics can be taken over by the classroom teacher to free up some of that time for the guidance counselor. The other thing that we have, which isn't part of our at-risk plan, but it's part of our at-risk funding, but it's a part of our total plan, is the idea of working with mental health therapists to bring them in to provide services during the school day. We've also just recently signed a memorandum of understanding with Easter Seals, who has a crisis short-term planning support that they can put in. It's not intended to be long-term, but can really come in and address some of those crisis management things that we have. So we are starting to get these agreements with some of our external partners to be able to come in on site and provide some of those things, because it's, even if we triple, quadruple, the needs are great.
Right.
And so how can we look at the way we are designing our curriculum? How can we work together to provide those threads all the way across the day, so that it's not just the job of the counselors, but it's something that we all embrace? Another thing I wanted to add on there is that we had done a training of mental health first aid prior to the COVID closure. That's a state training. We had one cohort where they came on site at Southeast Polk, and it was teachers, bus drivers, administrators. We could only have 30 in a cohort, but we filled it up and we had a waiting list. And then that was suspended during COVID, but we're working with Heartland and we will be reinstating that. And there's also a child mental health first aid that we'll be adding to that as well.
I
So,
think Bridget and I were both in that cohort.
okay, that's
So-
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we met on Saturdays.
We
and,
did.
We're gonna look at summer instead of Saturdays, because I remember we ran into some weather issues. Yeah, so we're going to pick that up again and
Good. And to do the
provide that
child so
regularly.
that they can help each other out. You know?
Right, yes.
Yeah.
And we're also looking at getting maybe a few Southeast Polk teachers to be certified trainers so that they could provide some of that on-site training as well.
Thank you.
Also, and I know this came about with COVID for other people searching out mental health, but have we looked at the availability of online? Okay.
We have actually tried to minimize that wherever possible because of the DE requirements that came out around telehealth. And most of that is the availability of space to guarantee privacy for that. So whenever possible, you know, since telehealth is flexible, that could take place outside the school. But we have a few occasions where if that's our only option, we do put that into
Yeah, and I'm
place.
thinking of those families which have limited options at home.
Yeah, so that we try to get face-to-face at school where we possibly can, because there's more, we can transcend time and space a little bit more with telehealth than we can with face-to-face. But if that's the only option that we have, then we do put it into place.
And I was thinking that was limited these last 2 years, the face-to-face.
Yes, and so it was almost all telehealth.
Okay.
But since we've gone back to face-to-face, the DE put in some additional guidelines
For that
around.
to happen. Okay.
Yeah. And we didn't mention that on the 6-7 building as well, but in that office space, we also added some additional spaces for a social worker or a mental health therapist who may come in externally. We created some spaces because space is a commodity. And right now we don't have enough spaces for everyone that we could have in, but we did build in some of those spaces in the new building design.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr.
right.
Latham.
Thank you.
Mr. Horton. Also.
been informed that I'm up against the start of the Iowa State basketball game.
Ruh-roh.
Not that that'll
It's
have
like
any
7
influence
minutes.
on my presentation, but tonight, just to kind of give the new folks sort of a snapshot of what the staffing plan looks like from year to year. Usually, it comes in 3 phases. Phase 1 is we try the best we can to foresee what our needs are probably going to be, and we try to hit the highest needs right away because we have no idea how much money we're going to have. State supplemental aid has not been set, and I wish the legislature luck in their endeavor to do that. Never seems to be done on time, and it never seems to be big enough, but whatever. It is what it is, and we figure it out and we move on and we make decisions moving forward. But that's kind of what phase 1 looks like. And then phase 2 is more an extension of that. And it also, we account for who's coming and going within the organization. And if there are needs that surface because certain people go or certain people come into the organization, that's where we kind of hang around with phase 2. And I know in speaking, and I try not to speak for Dr. Belger a whole lot because she speaks way better than I do. With new buildings and so forth coming online down the road, phase 2 will be populated a lot by what's going to happen who's going to be in that 6-7 building and who's going to be, responsible for the stadium. What people in Gary Haynes' department will be responsible for these or the softball diamond or whatever. So that's really what phase 2 looks like. And then phase 3 is usually, hey, what did we forget? Or we had no idea that 50 more kindergarten kids showed up. Oh gosh. Kindergarten roundup really yielded a lot of kids, which is great, but it may present a staffing problem. So that's kind of what phases 1, 2, and 3 look like for us. In the old days, we used to put one staffing plan together and just cross our fingers and hope we were right. And sometimes we were, and sometimes we weren't. And then we got smart and thought, okay, well, let's do this in phases and not throw up a huge thing at all of you, and maybe just look at 3 different phases so that you can, sort of dial in and look at these particular jobs. So the ones right in front of you tonight are, 2 of them actually we would love to be able to hire in January, mid to late January. And those would be the 2 special ed positions that are listed: a 1.0 elementary strat 2 ID teacher. ID stands for intellectual disabilities. We would put one in an elementary school, and that would be determined. And then we would put the other over at Spring Creek. As you can see, the fund is listed, so is the estimated cost. This is really in response to the idea that we currently, according to Mr. Taylor, he informed me that currently we're serving 66 more students in special education this year than we were last year. And 12 of those kids are level 3 ID students that would be taught by these 2 people. As you can tell, because of the severity of the disability, the roster sizes are smaller, 2 teachers for 12 kids. But those would be things those would be positions that I would like to move with right away if that's possible. But if not, and if we can't find people out there who, for lack of better terms, might fit our standards or would be acceptable as Strat 2 teachers at Southeast Polk, maybe one or the other, maybe even both would have to wait until the spring. But we'd like to go right away if that's possible with those 2 jobs. And then with the high school science teacher, obviously we're looking at next year, and then under future considerations, there are, English language arts, social studies, and math all at the high school that we would be interested in looking at once SSA is determined and we figure out really how, what kind of funding do we have or not have, based on the idea that at the end of the year, 463 seniors are going to graduate. And then next year, the 8th graders become 9th graders and we'll move into the high school. And there are 600, with the delta being 137 kids. So you start to go, wow, that's a lot of kids.
That's a
And
problem.
we're going to have some staff that are going to teach them. What's that, Brad?
That's a problem.
Yeah, no,
No.
nice problem to have. It is. It's kind of I guess, kind of a first world problem, if you want to look at it that way, for sure. But it presents a challenge, no doubt. So those would be things we'll probably talk about it when we hit phase 2. But if you have any questions about the first 3 jobs, and then I'm going to leave the mic here really quickly, because there's a really nice segue between Dr. Latham and Mr. Bakam's sort of foray into at-risk and dropout prevention, not only budget, but programming. Mr. Pettit has a great idea about what he would like to do with one particular staff member, maybe float that idea and then figure out, does it fit with SSA? Does it fit where we want to go? Is this something that you all can get behind and move that forward? But any questions about the first 3?
Before
Yeah.
you leave, how many special ed students are there currently? You said there's 66 more.
More.
Right.
Charlie, there you go.
Thank you. And how many of those are level 3? Thank you.
And we're still processing those as, I mean, obviously our goal is, it seems like 66 is a lot in a year. It's like, where did they come from? You know, how did they all decide, no, now we need to move them when they weren't the previous year? Are they younger kids? I mean,
partially through the evaluation process, they're evaluated, found eligible, as well as students moved into the district. So it's both.
is that, it seems like 66 is really high number for,
It's a large number.
And I think overall, too, Brett, just with COVID, there's a lot more movement than maybe you have seen a lot more.
So you
movement,
think
whether they're special ed or not. but
just the
because
lack of,
COVID,
okay.
we've seen a lot more movement
And
this year.
and I'm not knocking it either way. I think if they need the services, they need the services. I just, I don't have an opposition to the 3. So I mean,
Okay.
I think if we need to
What
get
is
them
the
to help.
average normally of what, of special ed students who come in each year? Is there? I'm sorry, I'm asking.
Maybe you can
I
meet
don't
with
know.
him and ask him questions.
What's
on
that? Yeah, either way, Charlie, you can come up here.
Average, the number of students that we have that are receiving special ed services has increased the last few years. The 66 is a large number. It's typically less than that.
Okay.
We're about 11 to 12% of our students receive special ed services.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess I would just say, not only those 3, I think Steve's issue coming up next year, I mean, obviously trumps it for, I would say, look at all of them. I mean,
Yeah. And those will all come to you once we know SSA.
Yeah.
Or we get maybe a guess, because it always hangs out there for a long time. We get sort of these tentative numbers, and usually it's between the biggest number and the smallest number. We hope, because if it's neither one, it's 0. So we're hoping for something in between the two, in between the two sort of extremes that become part of the legislative discussion.
Yeah, and besides the special ed, I think those are necessities. Steve's, did those include, because I know some of them, we lost some that we have never gained back. Are those some of the positions that we cut back in 2011-ish? And do we need to?
Last, decade now.
Yeah.
We've added back.
Okay, so these would truly be extra.
Except for music in the junior high, I'm still harping about.
Yeah, high school, yeah. Easy,
Not in
Laura,
the high
easy,
school.
easy.
I know.
Back down. Easy, easy.
Get me all riled up, Brett.
Anything to say about the legislature?
And you want me to start already?
Obviously at the next meeting, these 3 positions would come back to you for formal vote. I just kind of wanted to float the trial balloon with y'all, so you kind of had an idea about sort of our perspective and where this is going to probably end up going. And then you can vote certainly on these 3 positions at the next meeting. And then, but before putting phase 2 together, you want to come up, Steve, and just walk them through your at-risk approach that you're going to take moving forward at the high school.
I apologize to Kevin. We're 3 minutes after
tip off of your Iowa game.
It's probably got an earpiece.
He's
in the back
listening
there.
to it. He's fine.
There he is. I would say over the last 4 or 5 years, we've done as much as we can with our existing staff when it comes to redistributing time during the day to support student needs. I would say probably 4 years ago in our core areas, our teachers were tutors during their duty periods. We used to have tutoring in English and social studies and science and math and world language. We've made some adjustments with those. We now have a testing center. We do not have world language tutoring. We do not have English and social studies tutoring. Those teachers manage an academic support lab where we have identified freshmen and sophomores, instead of being in the large group study hall, that have demonstrated need. And we've put them in small groups with one of their teachers and kind of done a teaming approach to try to support those kids. We have about 70 students that are ninth graders that are in our academic support lab and about 70 students that are sophomores. So about 140 students that are in that. But it's really hard to keep track of 140 kids when it's an extra duty for a teacher, and the communication involved is really difficult. Those kids, as well as other kids, are in our credit recovery program. And again, our counselors' loads are very large. We have a credit recovery associate that manages our credit recovery room, but there's just lots of pieces that we want to do a better job of overseeing. So what I'm wanting to propose is a student supports counselor that would not take a roster of students like our talented and gifted roster does, but they would work on top of or work with our alphabetical counselors for 9th and 10th graders and students that are in kind of our, I don't want to say at-risk programs, but they're in programs being provided at-risk supports by our regular education teachers to try to do some coordination. I think there would probably be about 150 to 200 students that this person would be managing, monitoring attendance, monitoring academic progress, monitoring other types of at-riskness when it comes to like behavior, and would provide case management services for, I would say, anywhere between 25 and 30 students from that list. And it could be an ever-changing group, depending on which one of those students are demonstrating more need at which time of the year. We also have a Harbor waiting list. So students that are on the Harbor waiting list, some of those students are at the DMAC consortium, others are still in the building. So we would manage and support those students with our Harbor counselor. She supports the students that are at the consortium, but the students that are still in the building right now are being supported by our just alphabetical counselors. That those students would go on to this new person's kind of list to manage and support. And then we also have students that are identified by our student assistance teams, and our student assistance teams consist of our assistant principals and our counselors. Again, some of the kids that are in our academic support lab are kids that are identified that need extra support through our student assistance teams, but those kids would also come onto this list. So we would have one person that takes these students that are in these different connected, but sometimes disjointed programs, really work to oversee their attendance, their academics, and not from a recovery standpoint, kind of a support in the moment at the time, help coordinate with their regular education teachers, hopefully help them find more success. And I guess the primary responsibility would be case management services. Don't like my story.
Take your mic.
I thought you were coming for this.
It's a news story in the next 2 hours.
Can you show a little segment of that on the news?
Just make sure.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. As soon as he fell asleep back there, I knew we were done, Steve.
So again, that's kind of the idea.
This would be a new position?
And it's not listed on here anywhere at this point. It's just a need that is necessary as we grow even more.
I think there's a lots of needs, and I think this is one of the conversations that we're starting to have. Obviously, when you have more students and you have more needs, you different types of ideas. And I think this is one that I think would be successful. In talking with our school counselors, case management services is something that I don't know how many students you can case manage. You know, because each one of those is.
Sounds pretty high to me.
So talking about number of students, you said that there are 150 on the list, but then you started adding in more from other disjointed areas. So what is the actual or estimated number of
It's
kids?
between probably 150 and 200 students that this person would collect information on.
Okay.
But from that list at any given time, there are probably about 25 students that they're doing daily check-ins with, if not every other day check-ins, collaborating with teachers to just fill the gaps. You know, again, the hope is that a lot of those kids that are in our programs are receiving success from those programs. But the students that aren't, that's where we need to provide some more coordinated services.
So we're going to keep those programs and then add. this.
Yes.
Got it.
And how will we pay for this one?
Kevin
That's
usually
the
gives me a blank
magic.
check. So
He's always so generous like that. So will we see this potentially in phase 2?
Sounds like.
Or
phase
you guys
one.
are gonna work this over a little bit, or,
Can I ask?
Yes and yes.
okay,
We'll work it over and it probably would come in phase 2, if it moves forward. And again, if we find out state supplemental aid is
low,
minimal,
yeah.
we might go, hey, let's holster that. Let's keep that idea, let's keep it alive.
Well, and it might be a good year to add it in because of the increasing numbers throughout the building anyway. I mean,
I think it's a great extension to the guidance office. I just see somebody out there who's on foot, face to face with kids and going out rather than kids coming in.
right,
Go get them.
right.
I like that idea a lot.
And if it comes to it, we could always be flexible with the hours that this person works, you know, I mean, we might not have to have a full-time person, we could have a part-time. or-
2.5?
Yeah.
Sure.
we could, I would,
Yeah, good luck
I would like.
finding
I know we would like.
To
Just
be
saying.
clear,
Or 3.
Yeah,
And it's hard to find 0.5 people
Yeah.
in this role.
right.
Chances are really good they'd be coming to us as counselors with a master's degree. It's hard for them to go, yeah, I'll take that.
Well, unless they're retirees who wanna.
I think the key is, you know, what Mr. Horton just said. You know, the idea of this person having counseling training, I think is important.
Mhm.
You know, there's lots of really good-hearted people that focus on building relationships with kids, but we're talking about the kids that are probably demonstrating the most need.
Yeah.
So to have training and skills that really our counselors do have,
Mhm.
I think that's essential.
Quick quick question. I'm still here. If SSA is minimal or doesn't support this role, is this something that could potentially fall under ESSER? That magical pot of ESSER money?
look at him. Look at him, here he comes.
I think
Blank check.
possibly, Chad. Kevin's on his way to talk. I mean, we'd have to run it through the DE criteria.
Mhm.
And I think that there's some definite connections there. Just kind of, if you think of what Joe Ellen just went through tonight, there are a lot of connections there. But there's a rubric and a criteria and a process that Kevin would have to go through to get approval to actually do that. Now I'll let him actually talk.
You know, as we talk about that, when Dr. Latham's presentation regarding those students and picking up those students, this might fall underneath that realm as far as recovery. But just to remind folks, not being a damper, but the CARES money we're supposed to spend that by September 2024. So then what are the needs after that? Is this an extended need? Certainly can be built in the budget, but those are the decisions that we'd all make and go with at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we have kind of a golf ball right now in the garden hose, and maybe this is enough to bridge us through some of that, or hopefully we get more funding down the road from the state.
There's always that hope, Chad.
Yep.
Brett, it's your turn.
Oh, that's all right. I'm patient. My mom taught me a little bit about patience, not a lot, but and maybe this isn't really for Steve, but I suppose it could be with it's always hard to, when you say counselors, I mean, are they truly doing counseling? Which that's an argument for another day, but I think it's a good addition. I think maybe this would be a time that it'd be nice to see and hear a little bit about the counseling department to understand more where we're at, I guess where we've been, where we're at, and then where you want to go, because with the new members, I lose track of what their jobs are, what I kind of heard what you're saying, and I think it sounds like a great thing. And I mean, I don't see there's any negative to it, but maybe that's a time that we can bring that, whether you want to bring them in themselves or you come and talk to us a little bit about, just educate us a little bit more. We used to do those things in the past, and Dirk and I talked about that a little bit before, and maybe this would be a good start to that, because I think sounds like it's something that we need to do, and I'd say more than one, but.
I would say right now, our counselors are doing case management on their own. Each one of them, I mean, they have a roster of between, I don't know if it's, some of them are, I think our talented gifted counselors about 220. I think some of our alphabetical counselors are 4, a little maybe over, depending on how the alphabet breaks down. And each one of them has a list of those kids that they're doing regular check-ins, again, whether it's weekly, and again, it's attendance management, it's social emotional supports, it's credit recovery, graduation tracking, college planning.
Yeah,
home
and that's where I'm
problem,
going
it's
at, is
all of it.
our counselors have a lot of stuff on their plate. And I don't think adding one person is beneficial. I mean, you can't.
Well, it's
ask-
beneficial because it's more than 0.
Well,
so
no, I mean,
it's a good first
beneficial,
step.
But is it? Yeah, it's a first step. I get that, but I think that's something that, I mean, how do you expect one person to take 150 people and make a real difference? And I don't want to knock that down. I think it's a great idea. I think,
my hope is that, a first step like this, we would see benefits. And depending on funding, maybe this would become a priority, because the benefits, again, these are our most needy students that are the high school. The harbor is outstanding. It serves about 70 kids throughout the year, 44 kids or so at a time, and kids finish that program. And then they move on to whatever their next step is. Somebody takes their spot. So, again, probably about 70 students throughout the year, but like I said, 44 at a time. There's a lot of kids that need a lot of supports, and they can't get into that yet. So this would be, one of our support programs or support people to support those kids that are primarily freshmen and sophomores. Because that's where, if you don't get the support when you're a freshman and sophomore, it's hard to recover that down the road.
Yeah, and I'm only one of 7. I don't want to prolong this meeting anymore, but I think you've hit an important topic. At least for me, is I know when the 6-7 building gets built and we move freshmen out, I think administration really needs to consider not pulling counselors out to go fill in another. I think we need to add, because I mean, obviously if you have 600, 700 students going out, obviously counselors probably follow, I'm assuming, his initial plan, but from what you're just talking about, I mean, that just hits home, because you're it's part of the mental health, it's part of education needs. I mean, counselors have a lot. I mean, everybody does their piece, but we do put a lot on the counselors, and I don't think they get to do enough counseling when they need to.
And on the staff as a whole, but
Yeah.
he started out the conversation saying he needed 3. So this is just a wish.
Well, I'll take 7. I mean, I just made up a number. I don't know.
I remember back when
But
we
I'm
needed.
just saying,
yeah.
as an additional, once the transition
So
happens.
this is where I segue to.
I
the
really just said 1, Joe,
legislature
but
Right now, and you know what I mean?
Well, let Steve finish, I guess.
Yeah.
Before you go
No,
on.
I am
won't.
finished. I'm just
I
responding to questions.
But
I think it's definitely.
I appreciate your
important.
conversation and bringing it up, and it's not something to not consider.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely important for us to sit down and maybe have a strategic session of looking at what the counselors do. I agree with you, Brett. And just figuring out what we can take off their plates and really make this new position or new positions useful.
Yeah, I appreciate it too, Steve. Because I think we need to have a lot of conversations as far as probably ASAP too. As far as high school, I mean, we've got 4+ classrooms coming in next year, extra. So as far as like needs and stuff like that, I think we need to start addressing those now. So in preparation for next year. But yeah, I think that's absolutely a great need.
Yeah, when it comes to, course requests, we are just beginning that process. Our freshmen are, I think, submitting their course requests, I think on Monday's their last day. And then we'll roll into 8th grade students. We'll finish up by the end of this first semester. Then we have our sophomores and juniors. So when it comes to numbers of actually course requests, those usually come in right at around Valentine's Day. So that's kind of when we start looking at that phase 2 plan that Mr. Horton mentioned earlier, which is based off of, 600 kids that come in, they could request a whole different number of courses. And we're not exactly sure what our needs are until they actually make those course requests.
Anybody else?
Nope.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Steve.
you,
Thank you.
Mr. Horton.
Yep,
Thank you,
thanks, Joe.
Charlie, Kevin,
Yeah.
Dr. Latham, Dr. Belger, and Mr. Gary Hayne and Jason Kurth. Thank you very much. Anybody else for the meeting? I need a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
And go Hawks.